After 3 years of being nothing more than a shadow in her own marriage, Lena Carter's invisible existence shattered the night Damian Moretti, the most feared mafia boss in the city, finally looked at her like she was real. But it wasn't love that made him see her. It was another man's desire. Now, trapped between a husband who suddenly wants what he ignored and a past built on lies, Lena must decide if she'll remain a ghost in a gilded cage or claim the life she deserves. Stay until the end to see how this story unfolds, hit that like button, and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The first snow of December fell silently over the Moretti estate, coating the sprawling grounds in white perfection that matched the cold emptiness inside. Lena Carter stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of her bedroom, the East Wing bedroom, separated from Damian's master suite by an entire hallway and 3 years of calculated distance, watching the flakes drift down like fragments of a life that might have been. She pressed her palm against the glass, feeling the winter cold seep through. Somewhere in this massive mansion, her husband was conducting business. Always business, always power, always everything except her. 3 years. 3 years since their wedding day, when she'd worn white and made promises to a man whose eyes had looked through her like she was already a ghost. 3 years since her father had shaken Damian Moretti's hand, sealing a deal that saved the Carter family from financial ruin and certain death from rival criminal elements. 3 years since she'd learned that love was never part of the arrangement. "Mrs. Moretti?" A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Maria, the housekeeper, stood in the doorway with the same sympathetic expression she'd worn for months. "Dinner is ready. Should I bring a tray to your room again?" Lena turned from the window, smoothing down the simple cashmere sweater she wore. Even her clothes had become invisible. Muted colors, quiet elegance, nothing that drew attention. She'd learned early that Damian preferred her that way. Present, but unnoticed. Beautiful, but silent. There when needed for photographs or family appearances, absent the rest of the time. "No thank you, Maria. I'll eat in my room later." The housekeeper nodded, but her eyes held a question she'd never voice. How long could a woman live like this? How long before the isolation consumed her completely? After Maria left, Lena returned to the window. The snow was falling harder now, blanketing the world in white silence, much like the silence that had blanketed her entire marriage. She remembered the beginning with painful clarity, the whirlwind week when everything changed. Her father, Marcus Carter, had built a modest construction business that became entangled with the wrong people, borrowed money from sources that charged in blood, not interest. When he couldn't pay, the threats began. First his business, then his life, then Lena's. Damian Moretti had presented the solution with the cold precision of a businessman closing a merger. Marriage, protection for the Carter family, respectability for the Moretti empire, a beautiful wife to soften his dangerous image, to stand beside him at charity galas and political fundraisers, to prove that even a man who controlled half the city's underground could build something that looked like a normal life. "You'll want for nothing," Damian had told her the night before their wedding. They'd been in his office, this very mansion, though she hadn't lived here yet. He'd stood behind his desk like a king behind a throne, dark eyes assessing her with the same calculation he probably used for business deals. "You'll have your own space, your own accounts, complete freedom within reason. All I need is your presence at public events and your silence about my business." "And what about companionship?" Lena had asked, still young enough to hope, still naive enough to believe that proximity might breed affection. "What about building a real marriage?" Damian's expression hadn't changed. "I don't have time for romance, Miss Carter. I'm offering you safety and luxury. That should be enough." It should have been a warning, but Lena had been 23, desperate to save her family, and foolish enough to think she could make him love her if she just tried hard enough. The first year, she'd tried everything. She'd learned his schedule, had coffee ready when he worked late. She'd studied his business holdings, the legitimate ones, to make intelligent conversation. She'd worn beautiful dresses, perfected her appearance, smiled warmly whenever their paths crossed in the mansion's endless hallways. Damian had noticed none of it. Or worse, he'd noticed and didn't care. Their wedding night had set the tone. After the ceremony, a lavish affair that filled the cathedral and cost more than most people's homes, they'd returned to the estate. Lena had waited in the master bedroom, wearing white lace and trembling with anxiety and anticipation. Damien had appeared in the doorway, still in his tuxedo, and stopped. "This is my room," he'd said simply. "Yours is down the hall. Maria prepared it for you." Then he'd turned and left her there, standing in borrowed lace in a room that would never be hers. The memory still stung, even after 3 years of similar rejections. Lena moved away from the window and sat at the small writing desk where she spent most evenings. A leather journal lay open, filled with her thoughts, the only place she could be completely honest. She picked up her pen and began to write. December 14th, still snowing, still invisible. Sometimes I wonder if I'm actually dead and just don't know it. A ghost haunting a mansion, walking through walls that no one sees me pass through. Damien held a meeting in the study today. I heard the voices, men discussing territories and shipments in coded language they don't bother hiding from me because I'm not real enough to matter. Father called yesterday, asked how I was. I lied, said everything was wonderful. What else could I say? That I saved his life by selling mine? That the bargain he made turned me into expensive furniture in a museum no one visits? Maria thinks I should leave. She doesn't say it, but I see it in her eyes. Sometimes I think about it. Walking out the front door and never coming back. But where would I go? Father's business is stable now because of this marriage. If I leave, the protection ends. The deal breaks. And everything he built gets torn apart by the same people Damien keeps at bay. So I stay, and I disappear a little more each day. The pen trembled in her hand. Lena set it down and closed the journal, locking it in the desk drawer with a small key she wore on a chain around her neck. Her secrets were the only things she truly owned. A sound from the hallway made her freeze. Footsteps. Heavy, purposeful. Male. Damien. Her heart rate kicked up despite herself, a Pavlovian response to 3 years of desperate hoping. Every time he came near, some stupid part of her brain whispered that maybe this time would be different. Maybe this time he'd actually see her. The footsteps passed her door without slowing. Lena exhaled slowly, hating herself for the disappointment that crashed through her chest. When would she learn? Damien Moretti didn't see her because he chose not to. She was a contract he'd fulfilled, a checkbox he'd marked. Nothing more. She stood and moved to her closet, preparing for another solitary evening. But as she reached for her nightgown, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Hello? Lena Moretti?" A woman's voice, professional and crisp. "Yes? My name is Catherine Mills. I'm calling from the Winterfield Foundation's annual Charity Gala Committee. Your husband's office confirmed you'll be attending this Saturday evening." Lena froze. "I'm sorry. What?" "The gala. This Saturday. We're finalizing the seating arrangements and wanted to confirm you'll be there with Mr. Moretti. It's a very high-profile event. The mayor will be there, several international businessmen, media coverage. We're so pleased you'll be joining us." The woman continued talking about dress codes and dinner menus, but Lena barely heard. Damien had confirmed she would attend an event without telling her, without even asking. "I'll need to verify this with my husband," Lena said, cutting through Catherine's monologue. "Of course, we're just so excited. We rarely see you at public events, Mrs. Moretti. Your presence will be wonderful." After the call ended, Lena stared at her phone like it was a foreign object. 3 years. In 3 years of marriage, Damien had taken her to exactly 4 public events. Their wedding, a charity auction 6 months later when his publicist insisted, a political fundraiser the following year, and a ribbon-cutting ceremony for one of his legitimate business ventures. 4 events in 36 months. Each time he'd informed her the morning of, treating her attendance like a business appointment. But this was different. This was a Saturday evening gala, and someone from his office had confirmed her attendance without him even mentioning it. Before she could overthink it, Lena grabbed a robe and walked out of her room. Her bare feet made no sound on the marble floors as she navigated the mansion's west wing toward Damien's study. Low voices drifted from behind the heavy oak door. His evening meeting was still in session. She raised her hand to knock, then hesitated. 3 years of invisibility had taught her not to interrupt, not to demand attention, not to expect anything, but something in her chest, something that had been slowly dying, suddenly flared to life. Anger. Pure, clean anger at being treated like a piece of furniture that could be moved around without consultation. Lena knocked. The voices inside stopped. "What?" Damien's voice was sharp with irritation. She opened the door. 4 men sat around Damien's desk, hard-faced men in expensive suits who dealt in violence and money. They all turned to look at her, surprise flickering across their expressions. Women didn't interrupt business meetings. Wives didn't enter without permission. But Damien's reaction was what shocked her most. For the first time in 3 years, he actually looked at her. Not through her, not past her, at her. His dark eyes met hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. He sat behind his massive mahogany desk like a king on a throne, his jaw tight, his expression unreadable. At 32, Damien Moretti was devastatingly handsome in the way dangerous men often were. Sharp features, olive skin, thick dark hair that he wore pushed back from his forehead. His tailored black suit probably cost more than most cars. Everything about him screamed power, control, danger, and for 3 years he'd been completely untouchable. "I need to speak with you," Lena said, keeping her voice steady even though her heart hammered against her ribs. Damien's jaw tightened. "I'm in a meeting." "I can see that. It's important." One of the men, a silver-haired enforcer named Vincent, shifted uncomfortably. "We can step out, boss." "No." Damien's eyes never left Lena's face. "My wife can wait." The dismissal was clear, absolute, the same treatment he'd given her for 3 years. But something in Lena snapped. "No," she said quietly. "I can't." The room went absolutely silent. Damien's expression darkened. "Excuse me?" "I said I can't wait." Lena stepped fully into the study, closing the door behind her. "Someone from the Winterfield Foundation just called me about a gala this Saturday. Apparently your office confirmed my attendance. Was anyone planning to actually tell me, or was I supposed to just figure it out when a car showed up?" The 4 men around the desk suddenly found the ceiling fascinating. Damien stood slowly, his 6'3" frame unfolding with predatory grace. "We'll discuss this later." "We'll discuss it now." "Lena." Her name was a warning. "Leave." For 3 years she would have obeyed. For 3 years she would have apologized and disappeared back into her invisible existence. But standing there in her robe and bare feet, interrupting a room full of dangerous men, Lena realized she had absolutely nothing left to lose. The worst had already happened. She was already a ghost. "You can't keep treating me like I'm not real," she said, her voice shaking but clear. "I'm your wife, not an accessory you dust off when you need me for photographs. If you expect me at an event, you tell me yourself. You ask me. You treat me like a human being who deserves basic respect." The silence in the room was deafening. Vincent cleared his throat. "Boss, we really can. Everyone out." Damien's voice cut through the air like a blade. The 4 men practically scrambled for the door. Vincent paused beside Lena, giving her a look that might have been respect or concern. She couldn't tell which. Then they were gone, and she was alone with her husband for the first time in months. Damien walked around the desk with slow, deliberate steps. He stopped 3 feet away, closer than he'd been to her since their wedding day. She could smell his cologne, expensive and subtle, could see the tension in his shoulders, the dangerous glint in his dark eyes. "You just dismissed 4 of my most important associates," he said softly. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I interrupted a meeting. I'm sure your ego will survive." His eyes narrowed. "Where is this coming from?" 3 years. Lena's hands clenched in the soft fabric of her robe. 3 years of living in this house like a stranger. 3 years of being ignored, dismissed, treated like I'm invisible. "I'm done, Damien. I'm done pretending it doesn't hurt. I'm done being grateful for a prison just because it has marble floors." Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or something darker. "You knew what this was. I told you exactly what to expect. You told me I'd have freedom and safety. You didn't tell me I'd be completely alone." "You're not alone. You have Maria, the staff." "I have employees." The words burst out of her. "I have people who are paid to tolerate my existence. What I don't have is a husband. What I don't have is a partner. What I don't have is anyone who gives a damn whether I live or die." Damien's expression hardened. "Don't be dramatic." "Dramatic?" Lena laughed, and the sound was bitter. "You want dramatic? I could walk out that door right now and you wouldn't notice I was gone until you needed me for another photo opportunity. I could disappear tomorrow and the only thing that would change is Maria would have one less bedroom to clean. That's not true, isn't it? She took a step toward him, anger overwhelming her fear. When's my birthday, Damien? He blinked. What? My birthday. When is it? Silence. June 23rd, Lena said quietly. I turned 26 this year. You didn't notice. You were in Chicago on business. I ate dinner alone like I do every night, and Maria brought me a cupcake with a candle because she felt sorry for me. Her voice cracked. The housekeeper remembered my birthday. My own husband didn't. Damien's jaw worked, but he said nothing. So yes, Lena continued, I'm going to that gala on Saturday, because apparently I still have to play my part in this arrangement, but I'm done being invisible. I'm done pretending this is okay. And if you want me there smiling for the cameras, the least you can do is tell me yourself instead of having your secretary make the call. She turned to leave, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. Lena, she stopped, but didn't turn around. Saturday, Damien said, his voice strange and tight. 8 o'clock. Wear something appropriate. I'll have my driver pick you up. I live in the same house as you, she said to the door. You could just walk me to the car. I'll be there separately. Prior engagement. Of course he would. Lena left without another word, walking through the silent mansion back to her room. Only when she'd closed and locked her door did she let herself shake. Let herself feel the full weight of what she'd just done. She'd challenged Damien Moretti, interrupted his meeting, demanded to be seen, and he'd actually listened, not the way she wanted, not with warmth or affection or any acknowledgement that she might have a point, but he'd listened. He'd looked at her. For the first time in 3 years, she'd existed as something more than background noise. Lena moved to her bed and sank down on the edge, her legs suddenly weak. Her phone buzzed, probably Catherine Mills with more details about the gala. But she ignored it. Instead, she opened her journal again and wrote a single line. I think I just became real. Mad. The days leading up to Saturday passed in strange suspension. Lena expected fallout from the confrontation, coldness, anger, maybe even punishment. But Damien did something far more unsettling. He noticed her. Thursday morning, she came down for breakfast, something she rarely did, preferring to avoid the awkward silence of the dining room, and found Damien already there, reading the financial section of the paper. He looked up when she entered. Good morning, he said. Lena froze halfway to the coffee service. Good morning. Then silence. But it was different somehow, charged, like he was aware of her presence in a way he never had been before. Friday afternoon, she passed him in the hallway. He'd been on his phone barking orders in Italian to someone on the other end. When he saw her, he paused mid-sentence, his dark eyes tracking her movement until she turned the corner. She felt his gaze like a physical touch. Saturday arrived with brutal winter sunshine that made the snow-covered ground sparkle like diamonds. Lena spent the morning trying to control her nerves. She told herself this was just another public appearance, just another performance where she'd smile and make small talk and play the role of Mrs. Damien Moretti. But something felt different. At 6 o'clock, Maria appeared in her doorway. Mrs. Moretti, your dress arrived. Lena blinked. My dress? I didn't order a dress. Mr. Moretti had it sent. From Valentino. Maria's eyes sparkled as she held up a garment bag. Inside was the most beautiful gown Lena had ever seen. Deep emerald silk that shimmered in the light, with a fitted bodice and a skirt that would flow like water. Elegant, sophisticated, and absolutely stunning. Damien had chosen it. Damien had sent it. There are shoes and jewelry too, Maria said, setting down 2 more boxes. He has very good taste. Lena touched the silk with trembling fingers. 3 years, and he'd never once bought her clothing. Never showed interest in what she wore. Now this. What game was he playing? By 8 o'clock, she was ready. The dress fit perfectly, hugging her curves before falling in elegant lines to the floor. The jewelry was subtle but expensive. Diamond earrings and a delicate bracelet. Her dark hair was swept up in a classic style that showed off her neck and shoulders. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. She looked like someone important, someone who mattered, someone real. The knock on her door came at exactly 8. But when she opened it, she found Damien standing there instead of the driver. He wore a black tuxedo that made him look even more dangerous than usual. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his jaw freshly shaved. He looked like sin and power wrapped in Italian wool, and for the first time in 3 years, he looked at her like she was a woman, not a contract. His dark eyes traveled slowly from her face down the length of her body and back up again. Something dangerous flickered in their depths, something hot and possessive that made her breath catch. "You look beautiful," he said, his voice low and rough. Lena's heart stuttered. "Thank you. The car is waiting." He offered his arm. Lena stared at it for a long moment. This simple gesture he'd never made before. Then slowly, carefully, she placed her hand in the crook of his elbow. His muscles tensed under her touch. They walked through the mansion together in silence, but Lena was hyper-aware of every detail. The warmth of his arm under her fingers, the subtle scent of his cologne, the way their footsteps echoed in perfect rhythm on the marble floors. At the front entrance, a sleek black town car waited. Damien's driver, a quiet man named Thomas, held the door open. But before they got in, Damien stopped. "Lena." She looked up at him. "Tonight you're my wife," he said, his expression unreadable. "Not just in name. Do you understand?" She wasn't sure she did, but she nodded anyway. They drove through the city in silence. Lena watched the buildings pass, the Saturday evening crowds, the normal people living normal lives. She wondered what that felt like, to be ordinary, to be free. The Winterfield Foundation Gala was being held at the Grand Meridian Hotel, the most prestigious venue in the city. As their car pulled up to the red carpet entrance, Lena saw the flash of cameras, the gathered crowd, the security detail managing the chaos. "Remember," Damien said as Thomas came around to open their door, "tonight, you're mine." Before she could process what that meant, he was stepping out into the blinding camera flashes, and she had no choice but to follow. The moment they appeared together, the energy shifted. Lena had attended enough of these events to recognize the ripple of interest, the sudden focus of attention. Damien Moretti always commanded a room, but tonight the whispers were about her. "Is that his wife? I didn't know he was married. She's beautiful. Where has she been hiding?" Damien's hand settled on the small of her back, a possessive touch that shocked her. He'd never touched her in public before, never acknowledged her as anything more than an accessory. But now his hand was warm against her spine, guiding her forward, announcing to everyone watching that she belonged to him. They walked the red carpet together. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. Damien answered with practiced smoothness, but his hand never left her back. Inside, the ballroom was a vision of winter elegance. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing light over tables draped in white and silver. Hundreds of people in formal wear mingled and networked, the elite of the city's business, political, and social circles. "Damien!" A portly man in his 60s approached with a wide smile and a woman who must have been his wife. "Good to see you, and this must be the mysterious Mrs. Moretti. We've heard so much about you." Lena smiled graciously, falling into the role she'd perfected. "All good things, I hope." They made small talk, moving from group to group. Lena played her part perfectly, gracious, elegant, just mysterious enough to be interesting. She'd learned how to navigate these waters, how to make conversation without saying anything real. But something was different tonight. Damien stayed beside her, not just physically present, but engaged. Whenever someone addressed him, he included her in the conversation. When a businessman asked about his latest acquisition, Damien turned to her and said, "Lena has excellent instincts about these things. What do you think?" She'd nearly choked on her champagne, but she'd recovered and offered an opinion, one formed from 3 years of silently observing his business moves. The businessman had nodded thoughtfully, clearly impressed, and Damien had smiled, actually smiled at her. They were seated at a table with several prominent business leaders when it happened. When everything changed, a man approached their table, tall, distinguished, with silver at his temples and laugh lines around his blue eyes. He wore his tuxedo with easy confidence, and when he smiled, it was warm and genuine. "Damien," he said, extending his hand. "Victor Hale. We met in New York last spring at the Steinberg merger discussions." Damien stood, shaking his hand. "Of course. Good to see you again. Victor's eyes moved to Lena, and something in his expression softened. And you must be Mrs. Moretti. I don't believe we've met. He took her offered hand, and instead of shaking it, he brought it to his lips in an old-fashioned gesture that was somehow respectful rather than sleazy. Lena, she said, suddenly very aware of Damien's stillness beside her. A beautiful name for a beautiful woman. Victor released her hand but held her gaze. I have to confess, I've heard rumors about Damien's wife, but never had the pleasure. Now I understand why he keeps you hidden away. Lena felt Damien tense. I'm not hidden, she said lightly, just selective about appearances. Victor laughed. Smart and beautiful. Damien, you're a lucky man. He turned back to Lena. I'm in town for the week on business. Are you familiar with the Winterfield Foundation's literacy initiative? I sit on the international board. I've read about it, Lena said. The program providing books and education to underprivileged children globally? It's impressive work. His eyes lit up. You've actually read about it. Most people at these events couldn't tell you what charity they're supposed to be supporting. He pulled out the chair beside hers. May I? Damien's hand landed on the back of Lena's chair, a territorial gesture so obvious it was almost comical. Actually, Victor, we were just having a conversation, Lena interrupted, surprising herself. Please, join us. For the next 20 minutes, Victor Hale gave Lena something she hadn't experienced in 3 years, genuine interest. He asked her opinions, listened to her answers, treated her like an intelligent human being instead of expensive decoration. They discussed the Foundation's work, international development, the challenges of creating sustainable education programs in struggling regions. Lena found herself relaxing, engaging, actually enjoying a conversation for the first time in years. You have a real understanding of these issues, Victor said, his eyes warm with approval. Have you thought about getting involved? The Foundation is always looking for dedicated board members, especially with your insight. I don't know, Lena said, caught off guard. I've never really... She's very busy, Damien cut in, his voice sharp. Victor raised an eyebrow but smiled. Of course, but the offer stands. He pulled out a business card and handed it to Lena. My personal number. If you're ever interested in discussing it further, or if you're ever in London, where I'm based, I'd love to continue this conversation. Lena took the card, aware of Damien's dark gaze burning into her profile. Thank you. I'll think about it. Victor stood, nodding to them both. Lovely to meet you, Lena. Damien. Then he was gone, moving to another table. Silence fell between them like a hammer. Lena could feel Damien's anger radiating off him in waves. She turned to find him staring at Victor's retreating back with an expression that could have melted steel. What was that? He said quietly. What was what? A conversation? He was flirting with you. He was being polite. He gave you his personal number. For Foundation business. In London. Lena set down her champagne glass carefully. Are you actually angry right now? Damien's jaw worked. You're my wife. I know, you've mentioned that several times tonight, which is strange considering you've spent 3 years acting like I don't exist. Lena, you bring me to this event wearing a dress you chose, touching me like you own me, showing me off like a prized possession. But the second another man treats me like a person instead of an object, you're furious. She stood, smoothing her dress. I need some air. She walked away before he could respond, navigating through the crowd toward the hotel's garden terrace. The December cold hit her like a slap, but she welcomed it, needed it to cool the anger and confusion burning in her chest. What was Damien doing? Why now? Why tonight was he suddenly acting like a husband instead of a stranger? Lena. She spun to find him in the terrace doorway, his expression dark and intense. Go back inside, Damien. Not until we talk. About what? About how you've ignored me for 3 years, but the second another man shows interest, you suddenly remember I exist? He moved toward her with dangerous grace. You think I haven't noticed you? You think I haven't seen you? Yes, that's exactly what I think, because you've given me no reason to believe otherwise. You're wrong. He stopped inches away, so close she could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. I've seen every goddamn thing, Lena. Every morning you came down with coffee. Every time you smiled at me in the hallway. every effort you made to be part of my life. The confession hit her like a physical blow. Then why? Because I couldn't. His hands clenched at his sides. Because you deserved better than what I could give you. Because every time I looked at you, I remembered that you were here because of a deal, not because you chose me, and I couldn't stand it. Lena stared at him, her heart pounding. So you pushed me away? I kept my distance. I gave you freedom. I gave you everything except yourself. Silence fell between them, broken only by the distant sounds of music and laughter from the ballroom. Tonight, Damien said quietly, watching Victor Hale look at you the way every man in that room was looking at you, seeing him make you smile in a way I haven't seen in years. His jaw tightened. I wanted to kill him. I wanted to drag you out of there and lock you away where no one could ever touch you or talk to you or make you laugh. Lena's breath caught. That's not love, Damien. That's possession. I know. He stepped closer. But it's all I know how to feel. Before she could respond, before she could process what was happening, his hand came up to cup her face. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. You're so beautiful, he whispered, and I've been a fool. Then he kissed her. For 3 years, Lena had imagined what it would be like to be kissed by her husband. She'd imagined tenderness, romance, the slow building of connection. This was nothing like that. Damien Moretti kissed like a man claiming what was his, fierce, demanding, consuming. His mouth moved over hers with bruising intensity, one hand tangled in her carefully styled hair while the other pulled her against his hard body. It wasn't gentle, it wasn't sweet, it was raw possession, and it set her entire body on fire. Lena's hands came up to his chest, and she didn't know if she was pushing him away or pulling him closer. His heart pounded under her palms, racing as fast as hers. The kiss deepened, and she felt herself melting against him despite every rational thought screaming at her to stop. When he finally pulled back, they were both breathing hard. I can't do this, Lena whispered, even as her body screamed for more. Why not? Because 3 years of silence doesn't disappear with one kiss. Because I don't trust this. Because I don't trust you. Pain flickered across his face. What do I have to do? I don't know. She stepped back, wrapping her arms around herself. Maybe there's nothing you can do. Maybe we're too broken. We're not broken. We were never whole to begin with. The words hung between them like shattered glass. Damien's expression shuddered, and Lena saw him retreat behind the cold mask he wore so well. You're right. This was a mistake. He turned to go, and panic seized her chest. Wait, he stopped. I need time, she said. I need to figure out what I want, what I deserve. And I can't do that with you watching me like I'm something you suddenly decided you want to own. You're my wife. I'm a person you've treated like furniture for 3 years. You don't get to suddenly decide I'm yours just because another man saw what you've been too blind to notice? Damien faced her fully, and the expression in his eyes made her breath catch. It was raw, vulnerable, real. You want to know the truth? He said quietly. I've been terrified of you from the moment we met. Terrified of what you could do to me. Terrified of needing you. So I convinced myself I didn't. I built walls, and I kept you at a distance, and I told myself it was for your own good. He took a step toward her. But tonight, watching you shine in that room, watching other men see what I've been trying so hard to ignore, I can't do it anymore, Lena. I can't pretend you don't matter. Tears burned behind her eyes. I don't know if that's enough. Then tell me what is. The truth. Her voice shook. All of it. Every secret you've kept. Every reason you married me. Every deal and arrangement and business transaction that led to us standing on this terrace. I want to know everything, Damien. And then I'll decide if any of this is real or if I'm just another asset in your empire. He went very still. I'll tell you everything, he said finally. But not here. Not tonight. When? Tomorrow. Come to my office. I'll answer any question you ask. Lena nodded, not trusting herself to speak. They stood there in the December cold, snow beginning to fall around them. Two people who'd spent 3 years as strangers suddenly seeing each other for the first time. We should go back inside, Damien said. People will talk. Let them talk. But she followed him anyway. back into the warmth and light and carefully constructed facade of their public life. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Lena smiled and made conversation, but her mind was elsewhere. On that kiss. On Damien's confession. On the business card in her purse from a man who treated her like she mattered. When they finally left, snow was falling heavily over the city. They rode home in silence, but this time it felt different. Charged. Like something had fundamentally shifted between them. At the mansion, Damien walked her to her door. Another first. "Tomorrow," he said. 2:00. My office. "I'll be there." He raised his hand as if to touch her face, then let it fall. "Sleep well, Lena." She watched him walk away down the hallway toward his own room, and for the first time in 3 years she wondered what would happen if she followed him. But she didn't. Instead, she went inside her room, locked the door, and leaned against it with her eyes closed. Tomorrow, she would demand the truth. Tomorrow, she would find out exactly what kind of deal had made her Damien Moretti's wife. Tomorrow, she would decide if any of this could be salvaged or if she needed to walk away from a marriage that had never really existed. Tonight, she touched her lips where he'd kissed her and let herself feel something she'd thought was dead. Hope. Lena didn't sleep. She lay in her bed watching shadows play across the ceiling, replaying every moment of the evening until the images blurred together. Damien's hand on her back. Victor Hale's genuine interest. That devastating kiss on the terrace. The raw vulnerability in Damien's eyes when he'd admitted he'd been terrified of her. By the time pale winter sunlight crept through her windows, she'd convinced herself a dozen times to leave before their meeting, and a dozen times talked herself into staying. At noon, Maria brought lunch to her room, a habit formed over 3 years of solitary meals. "You look tired, Mrs. Moretti," the housekeeper said gently, setting the tray on the small table by the window. "I didn't sleep well." Maria hesitated, then sat down across from her, something she'd never done before. "May I speak freely?" Lena nodded, too exhausted to maintain formalities. "I've worked in this house for 15 years, Maria said quietly. "I've seen Mr. Moretti with many women before you. Beautiful women who wanted his money, his power, his name. He never brought any of them here, never married any of them." She reached across the table and squeezed Lena's hand. "Then he married you and everything changed." "Changed how?" "He's ignored me for 3 years." "Has he?" Maria's dark eyes were knowing. "Or has he been watching you more carefully than you realize? I've seen him stand outside your door at night. I've watched him read the books you leave in the library just to understand what interests you. Last month when you had the flu, he called the doctor himself. Wouldn't let anyone else handle it. He asked me every hour how you were doing." Lena stared at her. "That's not—" "He never said anything to me. Because he doesn't know how. Men like Mr. Moretti, they're raised in violence and power. Tenderness scares them more than bullets." Maria stood, smoothing her apron. "I'm just saying, maybe there's more happening than what you can see on the surface." After she left, Lena picked at her food without tasting it. Could Maria be right? Had Damien been paying attention all along, just in ways Lena hadn't recognized? The memory of his confession echoed in her mind. "I've seen every goddamn thing, Lena." At 1:45, she dressed carefully in a simple black sweater and tailored pants. She pulled her hair back in a sleek ponytail and applied minimal makeup. This wasn't a performance. This was a reckoning. The walk to Damien's study felt longer than usual. Her heels clicked against marble floors that seemed to amplify every nervous beat of her heart. When she reached the heavy oak door, she raised her hand to knock, then paused. This was it. Whatever happened in the next hour would determine everything. She knocked. "Come in." Damien stood behind his desk, but he wasn't working. He was just standing there, staring out the window at the snow-covered grounds, his hands shoved in his pockets. He wore dark slacks and a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up, the most casual she'd ever seen him. Made him look younger, more human. He turned when she entered, and the expression on his face stopped her breath. He looked like a man preparing for execution. "You came," he said quietly. "I said I would." "I wasn't sure you meant it." Lena closed the door behind her and moved into the room. "I want the truth, Damien. All of it. No more games, no more walls. If we're going to have any chance at making this work, I need to understand exactly what I married into." He nodded slowly, then gestured to the leather couch by the fireplace. "Sit, please." She sat, and he took the chair across from her, close enough to talk, far enough to maintain distance, professional, safe. Where do you want me to start? He asked. The beginning. Why did you really marry me? Damien leaned back, his dark eyes never leaving her face. Your father came to me 3 years ago. His construction company was failing, not because of bad business, but because he'd borrowed money from the Castellanos to cover a project that fell through. Do you know who they are? A rival crime family? Yes, and they don't forgive debts. They were going to take everything from him, his business, his home, his life. Then they found out about you. His jaw tightened. They were going to take you instead. Use you to force your father to work for them. Trafficking, most likely. Ice flooded Lena's veins. What? Your father panicked. He knew what they'd do to you, so he came to me and begged for protection. Offered me anything I wanted in exchange for keeping you safe. And you wanted a wife. No. Damien leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I wanted a way to expand into legitimate business without drawing attention. I'd been building a real estate development company, completely legal, completely separate from my other operations. But people don't trust men like me. They see my name and assume corruption. He met her eyes. I needed respectability. A wife from a good family, someone clean and untainted by my world. Someone who could attend charity galas and sit on boards and make me look like a legitimate businessman instead of a criminal. The words should have hurt. They should have devastated her. But Lena had suspected as much for 3 years. Hearing it confirmed was almost a relief. So you made a deal, she said. My hand in marriage for my father's life and business. Yes. And the Castellanos? I made them a different offer, one they couldn't refuse. Something dark flickered across his face. They don't threaten what's mine anymore. Lena absorbed this, her mind racing. What else? There's more, isn't there? Damien stood and moved to his desk, pulling out a folder. He handed it to her. This is the full marriage contract, not the one you signed, the real one, between your father and me. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Pages of legal language, clauses and stipulations, dollar amounts that made her stomach turn. But it was the highlighted section near the end that made her blood run cold. In addition to the terms outlined above, Marcus Carter agrees to transfer ownership of Carter Construction's waterfront property holdings to Moretti Development LLC within 5 years of contract signing. Said properties will be utilized for the Harborview Luxury Development Project, with projected revenue of $500 million over 10 years. She read it 3 times before the words made sense. My father's waterfront properties, she said slowly. The land he inherited from his father. He gave them to you? As part of the protection agreement, yes. And this development project, when does it break ground? Next month. Lena's hands clenched on the folder, so our entire marriage was about a real estate deal. I was the price tag for $500 million in development rights. Lena? No. She stood, the folder falling to the floor. You don't get to explain this away. You married me to get my father's land, to build your empire. I wasn't just a trophy wife, I was a business transaction tied to property acquisition. It started that way, Damien said, his voice rough. I won't lie to you. When I agreed to the marriage, it was strategic, cold. A merger between families that benefited both of us. Benefited you, you mean? What did I get out of this? What did I benefit? You got your life! The words exploded out of him. You got to stay safe, stay free, stay alive instead of being sold to the Castellanos like cattle. Your father got to keep his business. Your family kept their home. Nobody died, Lena. In my world, that's a fucking victory. Silence crashed between them. Lena wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold. You should have told me. You should have been honest from the start. Would you have married me if I had been? No. Exactly. Damien moved toward her, stopping a few feet away. I needed you to say yes. I needed the deal to go through, so I let you believe it was just about protection and respectability. I didn't tell you about the property transfer because it didn't matter. It was business. You were never supposed to be anything more than what? Than a beautiful lie you could parade around at galas? Than someone I could care about? The confession ripped out of him. You were supposed to be convenient, easy. A wife on paper who understood the arrangement and didn't ask for more. But then you moved into this house, and you were nothing like I expected. Lena's breath caught. What do you mean? Damien ran a hand through his hair, frustration and something deeper warring in his expression. You were kind. To everyone. Maria adores you because you treat her like a person, not a servant. Thomas, the driver, told me you always ask about his daughter. You learned Italian from books in the library because you thought it would make conversations with my family easier, even though I never brought you to any family events. He took a step closer. You brought light into this house, Lena. You brought warmth, and I couldn't handle it. So you pushed me away. I kept my distance because every time I looked at you, I felt guilty. You deserved someone who married you for love, not profit. Someone who could give you a real marriage, not this cold arrangement. I thought if I stayed away, you'd be happier, freer. You thought wrong. Lena's voice shook. All I wanted was to be seen, to matter to someone, and you made me feel like I didn't exist. I know. He closed the distance between them, his hands coming up to frame her face with devastating gentleness. I know, and I'm sorry. I'm so goddamn sorry, Lena, but I can't change the past. All I can do is tell you the truth now and hope it's not too late. She wanted to pull away, wanted to hold on to her anger like armor. But his touch was so careful, so tender, and his dark eyes held such raw vulnerability that she couldn't move. Is there more? She whispered. Are there other deals, other arrangements I don't know about? Damien's jaw tightened. One more thing, but you're not going to like it. Tell me anyway. He dropped his hands and moved back to his desk, pulling out another document. 6 months ago, your father came to me again. The Harborview development was behind schedule because of permitting issues. I needed political connections to push it through. Your father suggested I reach out to Senator Morrison, an old family friend of the Carters. Lena's stomach sank. What did you do? I invited Morrison to dinner, here, with you. She remembered that night. Damien had suddenly announced they'd be hosting a dinner party, something he'd never done before. She'd been thrilled at the opportunity to play hostess, to be part of his life. Senator Morrison had been charming and gracious, and he'd spent most of the evening talking to her about education reform and women's rights. You used me, she said numbly. You used me to charm a senator into helping your business deal. Yes. Did it work? The permits came through 2 weeks later. Lena sat down heavily on the couch. Anything else? Any other ways you've used our marriage for profit that I should know about? No, that's everything. She laughed, but it sounded broken even to her own ears. 3 years. 3 years of thinking I was just invisible, just unwanted. But it was so much worse than that. I was a tool, a means to an end. Every time you needed something, you wheeled me out and used me, then put me back in storage until the next business opportunity came along. Lena, don't. She held up a hand. Don't try to justify this. Don't tell me you were protecting me or giving me freedom. You were using me, Damien. Systematically, deliberately using me. He flinched like she'd struck him. You're right, I did. And I hate myself for it. That doesn't fix anything. I know. He sank into the chair across from her, and for the first time since she'd known him, Damien Moretti looked defeated. I know it doesn't, but I'm telling you now because you deserve the truth. All of it. No more secrets, no more lies. This is who I am, Lena. This is what I've done. And if you want to leave, I won't stop you. She stared at him. You'd let me go? If that's what you want, yes. What about the arrangement, the protection deal with my father? That stands regardless. Your family is safe. The Castellanos won't touch them. That was never conditional on you staying. Lena's mind reeled. He was giving her an out. After 3 years of feeling trapped, he was opening the cage door and telling her she could fly. So why wasn't she running? I don't know what I want, she admitted quietly. Last night you kissed me and told me you'd been terrified of me, and for a moment I believed maybe something real could grow from all this brokenness. But now, she gestured helplessly at the contracts scattered across the floor. How can anything real grow from such rotten roots? I don't know if it can. Damien leaned forward, his dark eyes intense. But I want to try. Not because of business, not because of deals or arrangements, because last night, watching you shine at that gala, watching you laugh with Victor Hale, I realized something. What? That I'm in love with you. The words fell between them like stones into still water. I've been falling in love with you for 3 years, and I've been too much of a coward to admit it. Too afraid that if I let myself feel anything, it would destroy me. Because loving you means you have the power to hurt me, to leave me, to choose someone else. And I've spent my whole life making sure no one has that kind of power over me. Lena's heart hammered against her ribs. You love me? Yes. Since when? Since you brought Maria flowers from the garden because you noticed she was sad about her mother's anniversary. Since you left books in the library with passages underlined that you thought I'd find interesting. Since the morning I found you in the kitchen at 3 a.m. baking cookies because you couldn't sleep, and you offered me one with flour on your nose and such hope in your eyes that I had to walk away before I kissed you senseless. His voice roughened. I've loved you for so long, Lena. I just didn't let myself acknowledge it until another man looked at you the way I should have been looking at you all along. Tears burned behind her eyes. That's not fair. I know. You can't ignore me for 3 years and then declare you love me and expect everything to be okay. I don't expect that. I don't expect anything from you except honesty. So I'm asking, is there any chance? Any possibility that you could forgive me? That we could start over and build something real? Lena stood, moving to the window to stare out at the winter landscape. The grounds looked like a fairy tale. Pristine white snow, elegant hedges, the frozen fountain in the center of the lawn. A beautiful prison she'd been trapped in for so long. I don't know if I can trust you, she said to the glass. Every time I think I understand what's real and what's performance, you pull back another layer and show me something worse underneath. Then let me prove it to you. She turned. How? Damien stood and moved to his desk, pulling out a legal document and a pen. He scribbled something on it, signed it, then handed it to her. What is this? She asked. Divorce papers, already signed. All you have to do is add your signature and you're free. Free from me, from this marriage, from everything. I'll give you a settlement, $10 million, the Manhattan apartment, whatever you want. Your family stays protected. You walk away with everything and owe me nothing. Lena stared at the papers in her trembling hands. Freedom, real, legal freedom. Everything she'd dreamed about during 3 years of isolation. All she had to do was sign. Why are you doing this? She whispered. Because I love you enough to let you go. Damien's voice was raw. Because you deserve the choice I never gave you 3 years ago. Because if you stay now, I want it to be because you chose me, not because you're trapped. She looked up at him, and the expression on his face broke her heart. He meant it. He was actually willing to let her walk away. And if I don't sign? She asked. If I stay? Then I spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of the chance you gave me. I dismantle every wall I've built. I let you into every corner of my world. I choose you over business, over power, over everything. No more secrets, no more using you. You become my partner in every sense of the word. That's a pretty speech, Damien. It's a promise. Lena looked down at the divorce papers, then back up at him. 3 years ago, she'd signed marriage documents without understanding what she was really agreeing to. Now he was offering her the opposite. A chance to sign away everything and start fresh. But was that what she wanted? Before she could answer, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out and saw a text from an unknown number. Lena, it was lovely meeting you last night. I meant what I said about the foundation board position. We have an opening in our New York office if you're interested. Would love to discuss over coffee this week. Victor Hale. She stared at the message, awareness dawning. This was the other choice, the other path. A man who'd shown her respect and interest in a single evening, a professional opportunity, a chance at a completely different life. Damien's eyes tracked to her phone. Who is it? Victor Hale. Something dangerous flashed across his face. What does he want? He's offering me a position with the Winterfield Foundation. The silence that fell was arctic. In New York? Damien asked quietly. Yes. Are you going to take it? Lena looked at him, really looked at him. At the tension in his shoulders, the controlled fury in his dark eyes, the way his hands clenched at his sides like he was physically restraining himself from ripping the phone from her hands. I don't know, she said honestly. It's a good opportunity, a chance to do something meaningful instead of being ornamental. You're not ornamental. I've been nothing but ornamental for 3 years, Damien. You made sure of that. Then let me make it right. The words exploded out of him. Let me give you opportunities. Let me support whatever you want to do. You want to work with foundations? I'll set up meetings with a dozen organizations. You want education, purpose, meaning? I'll give you access to everything you need. Just don't... He cut himself off, jaw working. Don't what? Don't let him take you from me. He's not taking me from you. I was never yours to begin with. You're my wife. On paper. In a contract tied to real estate deals and political favors. But I'm not yours, Damien. I'm not anyone's. And maybe it's time I figured out who I am when I'm not just being used by powerful men for their own purposes. She grabbed her coat from the back of the chair and moved toward the door. Where are you going? Damien demanded. Out. I need to think. I need space to figure out what I actually want instead of what everyone else has decided I should want. Lena, wait. No. She spun to face him. You've had 3 years to make decisions for me. For once in this marriage, I'm going to make my own choices. And you're going to have to live with whatever I decide. She walked out, leaving him standing in his study with divorce papers in one hand and desperation written across his face. The mansion felt different as she walked through it. Smaller, somehow, like the walls were closing in. She grabbed her purse and headed for the front entrance, where Thomas waited with the car. Where to, Mrs. Moretti? He asked. The city. I'll tell you when to stop. They drove through snow-covered streets while Lena stared out the window, her mind spinning. She had Victor's card in her purse, divorce papers waiting for her signature, a husband who claimed to love her but had spent 3 years proving otherwise, and a life that suddenly felt like it was balanced on the edge of a knife. Stop here, she said suddenly. Thomas pulled over in front of a small cafe in the Arts District, one of the few places in the city where she could disappear into anonymity. She went inside, ordered coffee she didn't want, and sat in a corner booth to think. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was Maria. Mr. Moretti is very upset. Are you all right? Lena typed back, I'm fine. I just need time to think. But was she fine? Nothing about this situation was fine. She pulled out Victor's card and stared at it. One phone call. That's all it would take. One call and she could explore a completely different future. One where she had purpose and independence. One where she wasn't just Mrs. Damien Moretti, trophy wife and business asset. Before she could second-guess herself, she dialed the number. Victor Hale. Hi, it's Lena Moretti. We met last night at the gala. Lena. His voice warmed immediately. I'm so glad you called. I wasn't sure you would. About that coffee, are you free this afternoon? For you? Absolutely. Where are you? She gave him the cafe address, and he promised to be there in 20 minutes. Lena ended the call and stared at her phone, her heart pounding. What was she doing? Was this about genuine interest in the foundation work, or was this her way of running from difficult conversations with Damien? Maybe it was both. Victor arrived exactly 20 minutes later, dressed casually in jeans and a wool sweater that made him look more approachable than he had in his tuxedo. He spotted her and smiled, weaving through tables to her booth. Thank you for meeting me, he said, sliding into the seat across from her. I have to admit, I'm surprised. I got the impression last night that your husband wasn't thrilled about our conversation. My husband doesn't control my decisions. Good. Victor ordered coffee when the waitress came by, then turned his full attention to Lena. So tell me, what interests you about the Foundation's work? They talked for an hour, about literacy programs in developing countries, about the challenges of creating sustainable education models, about Victor's vision for expanding the Foundation's reach, and the kind of passionate, intelligent people he needed to make it happen. You have real insight, he said finally. Most board members treat it like a social club, something to put on their resume, but you actually care about the work. I spent 3 years with nothing meaningful to do, Lena admitted. I read everything I could find about international development, education reform, economic empowerment. I wanted to understand how to actually help people, instead of just writing checks at galas. Then you'd be perfect for this. Victor leaned forward. The New York position starts in March. It's full-time, salary plus benefits, and you'd be working directly with our program directors to implement new initiatives. It's real work, Lena. Hard work, but meaningful. And it's in New York? Yes. We have offices in Manhattan. You'd need to relocate. Relocate. Away from the mansion. away from Damien. Can I think about it? She asked. Of course, but I need an answer by the end of the week. We have other candidates, but you're my first choice. He pulled out another card and wrote something on the back. My personal cell. Call me any time if you have questions. After he left, Lena sat in the cafe nursing cold coffee and staring at the 2 business cards in front of her. Victor Hale's offer of freedom and purpose. And beneath it, barely visible, the edge of Damien's signed divorce papers peeking out of her purse. 2 paths. 2 completely different futures. Her phone rang. Damien. She let it go to voicemail. It rang again and again. Finally, she answered. What? Where are you? His voice was tight with barely controlled emotion. Having coffee. With Victor Hale? That's none of your business. Like hell it isn't. You're my wife, Lena. You don't get to run off and meet other men without... Without what? Without your permission? I don't need your permission, Damien. I don't need anything from you anymore. Silence. Then, please come home. We need to talk. We already talked. You gave me divorce papers and told me to choose. Well, I'm choosing. I'm choosing to explore my options. I'm choosing to figure out who I am and what I want, and I'm choosing to do it without you breathing down my neck. Lena? She hung up. Her hand shook as she gathered her things and left the cafe. The winter afternoon had turned gray and cold, snow beginning to fall again. She walked without direction, letting her feet carry her through streets she barely recognized. Eventually, she found herself in front of her father's construction office, a modest building on the edge of the business district. She hadn't been here in years, hadn't seen her father since a brief lunch 6 months ago where he'd asked superficial questions and she'd given superficial answers. Before she could talk herself out of it, she went inside. Marcus Carter looked up from his desk, shock crossing his face. Lena? What are you doing here? We need to talk, Dad. He stood quickly, coming around the desk. Is everything okay? Is Damien? Damien's fine. I'm not. Her father's expression shifted to concern. He guided her to a chair and sat across from her. What's wrong, sweetheart? And suddenly, 3 years of pent-up emotion came pouring out. She told him everything. About the loneliness. About being invisible. About the contracts and deals and how their entire marriage was built on business arrangements she'd never known about. When she finished, her father's face had gone pale. I didn't know it would be like that, he said quietly. When Damien came to me with the marriage proposal, he promised you'd be taken care of, protected, happy. Did you know about the waterfront properties? Lena asked. Did you know our marriage was tied to a $500 million development deal? Marcus Carter looked away. I knew there were business considerations, but Damien swore you'd never be hurt by any of it. He swore he'd treat you well. He ignored me for 3 years, Dad. He made me feel like I didn't exist. I'm sorry. Her father's voice cracked. I'm so sorry, Lena. I thought I was saving you. The Castellanos were going to... He couldn't finish the sentence. I thought marriage to Damien was better than the alternative. It was, Lena admitted, but that doesn't make it right. What are you going to do? She pulled out the divorce papers. He gave me these, signed. All I have to do is add my name and I'm free. Her father stared at them. Do you want to leave him? I don't know what I want. That's the problem. For 3 years, I wanted him to see me, to love me. And now that he claims he does, I don't know if I can believe it. I don't know if any of this is real or if it's just another manipulation. What does your heart tell you? Lena looked at her father, really looked at him. He'd aged in the past 3 years. More gray in his hair, deeper lines around his eyes. The burden of the deal he'd made written across his face. My heart is confused, she said, but my head is telling me to take Victor Hale's job offer and start over in New York. Away from Damien, away from this whole mess, start fresh. Is that what you really want, or are you just running? The question hit too close to home. Before she could answer, her phone rang again. This time it wasn't Damien. It was Maria, and she sounded panicked. Mrs. Moretti, you need to come home, right now. What's wrong? It's Mr. Moretti. After you left, he started making calls, angry calls. And then men arrived. Dangerous men. There's going to be trouble. I can feel it. Please, you need to come home. Lena's blood ran cold. What kind of men? The kind Mr. Moretti usually keeps far away from the house. Please hurry. She ended the call and stood. I have to go. Lena, I'll call you later, Dad. She ran out to where Thomas still waited with the car. Home. Now. Fast. As they sped through darkening streets, Lena's mind raced. What had Damien done? What kind of trouble was Maria talking about? They pulled up to the mansion to find 3 black SUVs parked in the circular driveway, vehicles she didn't recognize. Through the windows, she could see figures moving in Damien's study. She burst through the front door and ran toward the study, Maria's worried face appearing from the kitchen. Mrs. Moretti, don't... But Lena was already pushing open the study door. Inside, Damien stood facing 4 men she'd never seen before. Hard men with harder faces. The air crackled with violence barely contained. Don't care what it costs, Damien was saying, his voice ice cold. I want the Harborview project shut down. Immediately. Sell the permits, return the properties to Carter, dismantle the entire deal. One of the men, a scarred figure with dead eyes, shook his head. Boss, that project is worth $500 million. You can't just... I can, and I am. Do it. Damien, what are you doing? Lena's voice cut through the tension. Every head swiveled toward her. Damien's expression shifted from cold fury to something more complex. Relief, fear, desperation all mixed together. Lena, you shouldn't be here. What's going on? Why are you shutting down the Harborview project? He moved toward her, and the dangerous men parted like water. Because it was built on lies. Because our marriage started as a business transaction, and I'm ending the business part. I'm choosing you over the deal, Lena. Over all of it. She stared at him. You're walking away from $500 million? Yes. Why? Because you were right. We can't build anything real on rotten roots, so I'm ripping out the roots. The properties go back to your father. The development gets shut down. Whatever profit I've made so far gets donated to charity. I'm dismantling every deal that used you or your family as leverage. That's insane. You'll lose everything. Not everything. He stopped in front of her, his dark eyes intense. If I lose you, I lose everything. The money, the power, the empire, none of it matters without you. So I'm making a choice. You or the deal. And I choose you. Lena's breath caught. This was real. He was actually doing it, actually choosing her over his carefully constructed business empire. You can't, she whispered. Damien, that's too much. It's not enough. He took her hands in his. 3 years ago, I married you for all the wrong reasons. I used you, manipulated you, treated you like a business asset. But I'm not that man anymore. You changed me, Lena. You made me want to be better. And if dismantling this deal is what it takes to prove that, then it's done. It's already done. The men behind him shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke. Lena looked from Damien to the documents on his desk, contracts being torn up, deals being dissolved, an empire being voluntarily destroyed. This doesn't fix everything, she said. I know. I still don't know if I can trust you. I know that too. And I still have Victor's job offer to consider. Pain flashed across his face, but he nodded. Then consider it. Take your time. Make whatever choice is right for you. I'll be here, Lena. I'll wait as long as it takes. But I needed you to know that I'm serious, that this isn't just words. I'm willing to lose everything to prove I love you. Tears burned behind her eyes. You're an idiot. Probably. And this is possibly the most dramatic over-the-top gesture I've ever seen. I'm a dramatic man. Despite everything, despite the anger and hurt and confusion, Lena laughed. It came out shaky and broken, but real. Damien's expression softened. There it is. That laugh I've been trying to earn for 3 years. Don't push your luck. Wouldn't dream of it. They stood there in his study, surrounded by dangerous men and torn-up contracts, and for the first time in their entire marriage, Lena saw her husband clearly. Not the cold, distant crime boss, not the calculating businessman, just a man who'd fallen in love despite himself and was willing to sacrifice everything to prove it. It wasn't enough. Not yet. But it was a start. Everyone out, Damien said without taking his eyes off Lena. The 4 men exchanged glances, then filed out silently, closing the heavy oak door behind them. The room suddenly felt smaller with just the 2 of them, the air thick with everything unsaid. Lena pulled her hands from his and moved to the window, needing distance to think. Outside, snow continued to fall over the estate grounds, peaceful and pure, completely at odds with the chaos inside her heart. "When did you decide to do this?" she asked quietly. "To shut down the Harborview project?" "The moment you walked out that door." Damien's reflection appeared in the glass beside hers. "I sat here staring at those divorce papers and realized I'd rather lose $500 million than lose you. So I made the calls, started dismantling everything." "Just like that?" "Just like that." She turned to face him. "And your associates? The men who depend on that project for income? They're just supposed to accept you throwing away that much money? They don't have a choice. I'm still the one who gives the orders." His jaw tightened, though Vincent did suggest I was having some kind of mental breakdown. "Are you?" "Maybe. Does it count as a breakdown if I'm thinking more clearly than I have in 3 years?" Lena leaned against the windowsill, studying him. The late afternoon light cast shadows across his face, highlighting the tension in his features, the exhaustion in his eyes. "What happens now? With the business, I mean. If you're walking away from the biggest development project your legitimate company has ever attempted, I find other projects, smaller ones that don't involve using my wife as leverage." He moved closer, stopping just out of reach. "I've built an empire before, Lena. I can build it again. The right way this time." "That's not how your world works, Damien. In your world, people who show weakness get destroyed. You just handed your rivals a massive opportunity to move against you." Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe, that she understood the implications. "You've been paying more attention than I realized. I had 3 years of nothing to do except observe and listen. I know more about your business than you think." She crossed her arms. "So tell me the truth. What's the real cost of this gesture? Beyond money?" Damien was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. "The Moretti family has been the dominant force in this city for 2 generations. My father built that power through fear and violence. I've been trying to transition into legitimate business to ensure his legacy doesn't die with me. The Harborview project was supposed to be the cornerstone of that transition, proof that we could operate in the daylight. And now? Now I've signaled to every rival family that I'm willing to sacrifice strategic advantage for personal reasons. They'll see it as weakness, soft, human." His expression hardened. "They'll test me, push boundaries, try to take territory they wouldn't have dared touch before." "Which means violence." "Probably." Lena's stomach tightened. "You're going to get people killed because of me." "No." Damien closed the distance between them, his hands gripping her shoulders. "I'm going to get people killed because I've spent my entire life in a business that runs on blood. That's not on you, Lena. That's on me and every choice I made long before you existed in my world. But this accelerates it, makes it worse. Maybe. Or maybe it forces me to find better solutions, smarter strategies." His thumbs traced circles on her shoulders through her sweater. "I've been playing this game my whole life. I know how to survive. What I don't know is how to live without you." The confession hung between them like smoke. Lena pulled away from his touch, needing to think clearly. "This doesn't change what happened, Damien. You still lied to me for 3 years. You still used me. You still built our entire marriage on deception." "I know." "And one grand gesture doesn't erase all of that. It doesn't make me trust you. It doesn't make us real. I know that too." He shoved his hands in his pockets, and for the first time since she'd known him, Damien Moretti looked uncertain, vulnerable. "But it's a start. And if all I can do is start making things right, then that's what I'll do, every day, for as long as it takes." "What if it's not enough? What if I can never get past what you've done?" Pain flashed across his face. "Then at least I'll know I tried, that I didn't let you walk away without fighting for something real." Lena's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out to find a text from Victor. "Had a wonderful time at coffee. The offer stands. Let me know by Friday. You'd be amazing in this role." She stared at the message, awareness washing over her. Friday, 3 days away, 3 days to decide between 2 completely different futures. Victor again? Damien's voice was carefully neutral, but tension radiated from every line of his body. He needs an answer about the job by Friday. "And what are you going to tell him?" "I don't know yet." Damien nodded slowly. Can I ask you something? When you were having coffee with him today, how did it feel? The question caught her off guard. What do you mean? Did you feel seen, respected, like you mattered? Lena thought about the hours she'd spent with Victor, discussing education reform and program implementation, about how he'd listened to her ideas, asked her opinions, treated her like an intelligent professional instead of ornamental wife. Yes, she admitted, I felt like I mattered. Something cracked in Damien's expression. Good. You should feel that way. You should have felt that way every day for the past 3 years. He moved to his desk, bracing his hands against the mahogany surface like it was the only thing keeping him upright. If taking that job is what makes you happy, then take it. If Victor Hale can give you what I failed to give you, then go to him. I won't stand in your way. Just like that, you'd let me go work with another man who's clearly interested in more than just my professional abilities? His knuckles went white against the desk. Victor Hale is a good man, respected, legitimate, no blood on his hands. He'd treat you the way you deserve. So yes, if that's what you choose, I'll let you go, even if it destroys me. Lena stared at him. You're really willing to do that? I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make you happy, even if it means losing you. The word should have filled her with satisfaction. After 3 years of being ignored, here was her husband willing to sacrifice everything for her happiness. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt complicated. Because standing there watching Damien struggle with emotions he'd spent a lifetime suppressing, Lena realized something terrifying. She still loved him. Despite everything he'd done, despite the lies and manipulation and cold distance, some stupid part of her heart still belonged to the man who'd married her for all the wrong reasons. I need time, she said quietly. Real time, away from this house, away from you, to figure out what I actually want. Not what you want, not what my father wants, not what anyone else thinks is best. What I want. How much time? I don't know, a week, maybe more. Damien straightened, and she watched him pull himself together, burying the vulnerability behind the cold mask he wore so well. Where will you go? I have a friend from college who lives in the city, Rachel. She's offered me her spare room before. I'll stay with her. I'll have Thomas drive you. No, I'll call a car service. Lena, I mean it, Damien. If I'm going to do this, I need complete separation. No drivers reporting back to you. No security detail following me around. No control. Real independence. His jaw worked like he was physically biting back arguments. Finally, he nodded. Okay, but take this. He pulled something from his desk drawer, a small black credit card. It's not tied to any of our accounts. Cash secured, completely private. Use it for whatever you need. She almost refused on principle, but practical reality stopped her. She had money in her personal account, money Damien had deposited monthly per their arrangement, but not enough for an extended stay away from the mansion. She took the card. Thank you. And Lena? His dark eyes met hers. If you need anything, anything at all, call me. I don't care if it's 3 a.m. or you just need someone to talk to. I'll be there. Something in her chest tightened. Okay. She left the study and headed upstairs to pack, her mind spinning. This was really happening. She was actually leaving. In her bedroom, she pulled out a suitcase and started filling it with clothes. Practical things, jeans, sweaters, comfortable shoes. Not the designer dresses and expensive jewelry Damien had provided. She wanted to remember who she was before this marriage, before she became Mrs. Damien Moretti. Maria appeared in the doorway, her face etched with concern. You're leaving? Just for a while. I need space to think. Does Mr. Moretti know? Yes. The housekeeper moved into the room, and Lena was startled to see tears in her eyes. I'm going to miss you. Maria, I'm not disappearing. I'm just staying with a friend for a bit. But what if you don't come back? Maria's voice cracked. What if you decide to leave for good? This house has been so much brighter with you in it. You brought warmth, kindness, things we haven't had since… She cut herself off. Since what? Maria sat on the edge of the bed. Mr. Moretti's mother. She was a wonderful woman, gentle, loving, the kind of person who made everyone around her better. She died when he was 17. After that, His father raised him in violence and coldness. He learned to bury everything soft, everything human. She looked up at Lena. Then you came, and I saw glimpses of the boy he used to be, the one who still had hope. You brought that out in him, even when he didn't know how to show it. Lena sank down beside her. I can't save him, Maria. I can't fix him. I can barely figure out how to save myself. I'm not asking you to save him. I'm just asking you to remember that beneath all that ice and control, there's a man who loves you, who's terrified of losing you, who's trying, however badly, to make things right. Trying isn't enough. I need actual change, real partnership, not grand gestures followed by the same patterns. Then tell him that, make him prove it, but don't give up without giving him a real chance. Maria squeezed her hand. Sometimes the people most worth loving are the hardest to reach. After Maria left, Lena finished packing in silence. She called Rachel, who enthusiastically agreed to host her. Then she called a car service. As she was carrying her suitcase downstairs, she found Damien waiting in the foyer. He changed into casual clothes, dark jeans and a black sweater that made him look younger, more approachable, but his expression was carefully blank. Your car's here, he said quietly. Thank you. They stood there in awkward silence until the driver buzzed again. Lena, Damien started. Don't. She held up a hand. Don't make this harder than it already is. I need to go. He nodded stiffly. But as she reached for the door handle, he spoke again. I love you. I know I have no right to say it, no right to expect anything in return. But I need you to know I love you more than I've ever loved anything in my life. And whatever you decide, that won't change. Lena's hand trembled on the handle. She didn't turn around, couldn't look at him without her resolve crumbling. Goodbye, Damien. She walked out into the winter evening without looking back. Rachel's apartment was a cramped one-bedroom in a walk-up building 40 minutes from the estate. It was cluttered with books and plants and mismatched furniture, and Lena loved it immediately. It felt real, lived in, human. You look like hell, Rachel said bluntly, pulling her into a hug. When you called, I almost didn't believe it was you. 3 years and barely a word, then suddenly you need a place to crash. I'm sorry. I've been a terrible friend. You've been in prison. I get it. Rachel grabbed the suitcase and hauled it inside. But you're out now, right? Please tell me you're finally leaving that cold bastard. Lena collapsed on the worn couch. It's complicated. It's always complicated with rich men. That's how they keep you hooked. Rachel disappeared into the kitchen and returned with 2 glasses of wine. Start from the beginning. Tell me everything. So Lena did. She told Rachel about the 3 years of isolation, about the contracts and deals, about Damien's confession and the Harbor View project being dismantled, about Victor Hale's job offer, about the divorce papers waiting for her signature. When she finished, Rachel was quiet for a long moment. Okay, she said finally. I have questions. First, do you love him? I don't know anymore. I loved who I thought he could be, but I'm not sure that person actually exists. Second question, do you want to love him? Lena wrapped her hands around her wine glass. That's a weird question. Is it? Because it seems like you're at a crossroads. You can take Victor's offer, start fresh in New York, build a new life with new possibilities. Or you can give Damien a real chance to prove he's changed. Both options are valid, but only one of them involves fighting for a relationship that's hurt you. So I'm asking, is Damien worth fighting for? I don't know. Then figure it out. You have 3 days before Victor needs an answer. Spend that time getting clear on what you actually want instead of reacting to what everyone else wants from you. It was good advice. Lena spent the next 2 days exploring the question from every angle. She walked through the city, sat in coffee shops, visited museums. She let herself feel the freedom of being anonymous again, of being just Lena, not Mrs. Moretti. It was both liberating and lonely. On the second evening, her phone rang. Damien. She'd been ignoring his calls, but something made her answer this time. Hello? Lena. Just her name, but she heard everything beneath it. Relief, longing, desperation. Are you okay? I'm fine. Where are you? Are you safe? I'm safe. I'm staying with Rachel. A pause. I miss you. 3 words, simple, devastating. Damien. I know. I'm not supposed to call. I'm supposed to give you space, but I needed to hear your voice. Needed to know you're all right. His voice roughened. The house is so empty without you. I never realized how much life you brought to it until you were gone. Lena closed her eyes, fighting against the pull of his words. I need more time. I know. I'll give you all the time you need. He cut himself off. Never mind. I shouldn't have called. Wait. The word escaped before she could stop it. How are you doing? With everything? The business? Vincent thinks I've lost my mind. Half my associates are circling like sharks, waiting to see if I'm really as weak as I appear, and the Castellanos made a move on one of our distribution territories yesterday. Small, but deliberate. Testing. Her stomach dropped. Are you in danger? Nothing I can't handle. But she heard the tension beneath the casual words. I've dealt with worse. What did you do? About the Castellanos. Reminded them why people are afraid of the Moretti name. It's handled. Lena's mind filled with dark possibilities. Violence. Blood. The brutal reality of the world Damien lived in. Did people get hurt? Some. No one died, if that's what you're asking. She should have felt relieved. Instead, she felt the full weight of what being married to Damien Moretti really meant. This was his reality. This was the life she'd be choosing if she went back. I have to go, she said quietly. Lena, I'll call you when I'm ready. But please don't call me again. I need space to think clearly, and I can't do that when I'm talking to you. Silence. Then, okay, I'm sorry. I won't call again unless you call first. Thank you. But Lena, whatever you decide, know that I meant everything I said. I love you. And I'll wait as long as it takes. She ended the call before she could respond, before she could say something she wasn't ready to commit to. That sounded intense, Rachel said from the kitchen doorway. He called to check on me, and he told me he loves me, and he's willing to wait however long I need. Rachel came and sat beside her on the couch. What does your gut tell you? Lena pressed a hand to her stomach. My gut is confused. Part of me wants to run as far from Damien as possible, but another part, she shook her head. Another part keeps remembering the way he looked when he told me he was dismantling the Harborview project, like he was ripping out his own heart to prove a point. Men like that, they don't make grand gestures unless it's real. The question is whether real is enough. The next morning, Lena woke to find an email from Victor. Lena just wanted to remind you about the Friday deadline for the New York position. I've attached more details about the role and compensation package. Whatever you decide, it's been a pleasure getting to know you. Hope to hear from you soon. Best, Victor. She opened the attachment and read through the offer. Generous salary, comprehensive benefits, real responsibility and meaningful work. Everything she'd been craving. All she had to do was say yes. But when she imagined herself in New York, working with the foundation, building a new life, the image felt incomplete, like something essential was missing. She spent the day walking through the city, ending up at the waterfront where the Harborview project was supposed to break ground next month. Construction equipment sat idle under gray winter skies. Workers in hard hats stood around in small groups, uncertain about their futures now that the project was indefinitely stalled. Can I help you? One of the foremen approached, a burly man with kind eyes. I'm just looking. This was supposed to be a big development, right? Was. Until the Morettis pulled out last week. Left us all hanging. He shook his head. Shame, really. This area needs the development. Jobs, housing, investment. Now it's just going to sit here rotting. What will you do? Find other work, I guess. It's what we always do. Though jobs like this don't come along often. He studied her. You live around here? No, I know someone involved with the project. Then tell them they made a mistake. This could have been something special, could have changed lives. Instead, it's dead in the water because someone got cold feet. As Lena walked away, guilt twisted in her chest. Damien had dismantled the project for her, to prove he valued her more than profit. But in doing so, he'd destroyed opportunities for dozens of workers, for the community that needed development. It was a grand gesture, yes, but was it the right choice? That evening, she sat in Rachel's apartment staring at her phone. Tomorrow was Friday. Tomorrow she had to give Victor an answer. Tomorrow she had to choose. Her phone buzzed. Not Damien. He'd kept his promise not to call. It was her father. Dad? Lena, sweetheart. I've been worried. Are you all right? I'm fine, just thinking. About Damien? About everything. She curled up on the couch. Dad, when you made the deal with Damien 3 years ago, did you think it would work out? Did you think we could actually build a real marriage? Marcus was quiet for a moment. I hoped. Damien's a hard man, but he has honor. I thought if anyone could reach the human underneath all that armor, it would be you. And if I can't? If he's too broken, too damaged by his world? Then you walk away with your head high and build a life you're proud of. You don't owe anyone martyrdom, Lena. Not me, not Damien, not anyone. But the Harborview project is business. Just business. The properties are back in my name. I can sell them to another developer, keep them, whatever I want. That's not your burden to carry. Damien destroyed a $500 million deal for me. No, he destroyed it for himself, to prove he could put love before profit. That's on him, not you. Her father's voice softened. Sweetheart, you need to make this decision based on what you want, not on guilt or obligation. What do you want? It was the same question Rachel had asked, the same question Lena had been asking herself for 3 days. What did she want? She thought about the Manhattan apartment Victor had mentioned, about meaningful work and independence, about starting fresh somewhere new. Then she thought about the mansion, about Maria's warm smile and Thomas's quiet kindness, about Damien standing in his study, dismantling his empire piece by piece because she'd asked for truth, about the way he'd kissed her on that terrace like she was oxygen and he was drowning. I don't know, Dad, she whispered. I honestly don't know. Then maybe you're not ready to decide, and that's okay too. After they hung up, Lena sat in the darkness, watching car lights streak past on the street below. Rachel had gone to bed hours ago, leaving her alone with her thoughts. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from an unknown number. This is Vincent, Mr. Moretti's associate. He doesn't know I'm contacting you, but you should know. The Castellanos made another move tonight, bigger this time. Your husband is handling it, but it's getting dangerous. He's distracted, making mistakes he wouldn't normally make. I'm worried about him. Thought you should know. Lena's heart stuttered. She typed back, Is he hurt? Not yet, but he's taking risks. Unnecessary ones. Like he doesn't care what happens to him anymore. She stared at the message, ice flooding her veins. What was Damien doing? What kind of risks? Before she could second-guess herself, she was calling him. He answered on the first ring. Lena? Vincent texted me. He said you're in trouble, that you're taking risks. A pause. I'm going to kill Vincent. Are you okay? Tell me the truth. I'm fine. It's just business. Nothing I can't handle. Damien, please, don't lie to me. Not now. She heard him exhale slowly. The Castellanos are pushing harder than I expected. They see the Harborview shutdown as weakness, and they're capitalizing on it. I've had to respond aggressively to maintain position. It's under control. Vincent doesn't think it's under control. He thinks you're being reckless. Vincent worries too much. Or you're not thinking clearly because I left and you're spiraling. Silence. Then, maybe both things are true. Lena closed her eyes. You can't do this. You can't put yourself in danger because we're having problems. I can do whatever I want. I'm a grown man running a criminal empire. You're an idiot who's going to get himself killed. Would you care? The question was raw, vulnerable. If something happened to me, would you even care? Of course I would care. I'm angry at you, I'm hurt and confused, and I don't know if I can trust you, but I don't want you dead, Damien. Then come home. The two words hung in the air like a challenge. That's not fair, Lena whispered. I know, nothing about this is fair, but I'm telling you the truth. I'm not myself without you. I'm making mistakes, taking chances I shouldn't take. And if something happens to me, I want my last conversation with you to be more than me promising to give you space. What do you want it to be? I want to tell you that loving you was the best thing I ever did. Even if you never forgive me. Even if you walk away tomorrow, and I never see you again. These past few days, knowing you existed in my world, brought more light to my life than the previous 32 years combined. Tears burned behind her eyes. You're manipulating me, using my emotions to get me to come back. I'm telling you the truth. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. Because I'm not asking you to stay. I'm not asking you to choose me. I'm just asking you to believe that what I feel is real. That's all. Just believe me, Lena. Even if you don't come home, even if you take Victor's offer and move to New York, just believe that I love you. The tears spilled over. I want to believe you, but I'm scared. I'm so scared of being hurt again, of being used, of disappearing back into invisibility. Then don't come back for me. Come back for you. Come back because you want to fight for what we could be. Or don't come back at all because you deserve better than what I can give you. Either way, I'll respect your choice. Lena wiped at her tears with shaking hands. I have to give Victor an answer tomorrow. I know. And I don't know what I'm going to say. Whatever you decide, I'll accept it. I promise. They sat in silence, connected only by the phone line, separated by so much more than physical distance. Be safe, Lena finally said. Please, don't take unnecessary risks. I'll try. Damien, I know. I love you too, even if you can't say it yet. She ended the call before she could fall apart completely. Rachel found her on the couch at 2 a.m, still crying. What happened? She asked, sitting beside her. Damien, he's in trouble, taking risks because I left, and I don't know what to do. Do you want to go back to him? I want to go back to him. Does that make sense? Rachel wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Perfect sense. You love him, but you don't trust him yet. And love without trust is just beautiful pain. So what do I do? You make a choice. New York and Victor and a fresh start. Or home and Damien and the hard work of rebuilding something from broken pieces. Neither choice is wrong, Lena, but only one of them is yours. Lena leaned against her friend's shoulder, exhausted and confused and terrified of making the wrong decision. But as she sat there in the quiet darkness, something crystallized in her mind, a truth she'd been avoiding. She loved Damien. Despite everything, despite the lies and manipulation and 3 years of invisibility, she loved the complicated, damaged man who'd married her for all the wrong reasons and was now destroying his empire to prove love could matter more than power. But love wasn't enough. Love without trust was just another prison. If she was going to go back, she needed to know it would be different, really different. Not grand gestures, but daily choices, real partnership, true transparency. She needed to know Damien was capable of change, not just big dramatic sacrifices, but small, consistent transformations. And there was only one way to find out. Friday morning, Lena woke with clarity she hadn't felt in days. She showered, dressed, and made herself coffee while Rachel slept. Then she made 2 phone calls. The first was to Victor. Victor, it's Lena Moretti. Lena, I was hoping to hear from you. Have you made a decision? I have, and I'm incredibly grateful for the opportunity, but I have to decline. I'm not ready to leave the city yet. There are things here I need to resolve first. To his credit, Victor took it gracefully. I understand. If circumstances change, the offer stands. You're a remarkable woman, Lena. I hope your husband realizes how lucky he is. I hope so too. The second call was to Damien. Lena? He answered immediately, his voice rough like he hadn't slept. I'm coming home, but we need to talk, really talk, about what happens next, about what a real marriage between us would actually look like. Silence. Then, okay. When? Now. Send Thomas to pick me up. He'll be there in 30 minutes. Damien? Yeah? This doesn't mean everything's fixed. This means I'm willing to try. But you have to meet me halfway. You have to prove that what we build from here is real. I will. I swear to you, Lena, I'll prove it every single day. She ended the call and turned to find Rachel standing in the doorway, coffee in hand. You're going back, Rachel said. Not a question. I'm going back, but on my terms this time. Good. Make him work for it. Make him earn you every single day. I will. And if he screws up again? Lena smiled, and for the first time in days, it felt genuine. Then I'll leave for real, and I'll know I gave it everything I had. When Thomas arrived, he looked relieved to see her. Mrs. Moretti, it's good to have you back. It's good to be back. How is he, Thomas? Really? The driver's expression darkened. He's been better. The past few days have been difficult. Vincent said he's taking risks. Mr. Moretti has always been fearless, but lately it's been different, like he doesn't care what happens to him. Guilt twisted in Lena's chest. Take me home, Thomas, quickly. The drive back to the estate felt both endless and too short. Lena's heart pounded as they pulled through the gates and up the circular driveway. The mansion looked the same as always, elegant, imposing, cold. But maybe if she and Damien could actually figure this out, it could become something more, something warm, something real. She found him in his study, standing at the window just like he'd been 4 days ago when she'd demanded the truth. But he looked different now, tired, worn, like he'd been fighting battles on every front and losing. When he heard her enter, he turned, and the expression on his face made her breath catch. Hope and fear and desperate love all mixed together. You came back, he said quietly. I came back. Lena closed the door behind her. Now we talk about what happens next. Damien gestured to the leather couch by the fireplace, the same place where they'd sat when he'd first revealed the truth about their marriage. But this time felt different. The air between them crackled with possibility instead of just pain. Before we talk about the future, Lena said, settling onto the couch but maintaining careful distance, I need to know what's happening with the Castellanos. Vincent said you're taking unnecessary risks. Vincent talks too much. But Damien sat across from her, and she could see the exhaustion carved into his features. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and tension lined his jaw. It's handled. That's not an answer. He was quiet for a long moment, clearly wrestling with how much to tell her. Finally, he leaned forward, elbows on his knees. The Castellanos saw the Harborview shutdown as weakness. They've been testing our territories, pushing boundaries, trying to provoke a response that would justify an all-out war. What kind of response? The kind I'm very good at providing. His expression darkened. 2 nights ago, they hit one of our distribution centers, burned it to the ground. 3 of my men were injured, so I responded in kind. Lena's stomach tightened. What did you do? I reminded them that backing a wounded animal into a corner is a bad strategy. They lost a warehouse, some product, and several key players are now reconsidering their career choices. He met her eyes. No one died, if that's what you're asking. But people got hurt. That's the reality of my world, Lena. Violence is the language everyone speaks. And the risks Vincent mentioned? Damien's jaw tightened. I may have personally led the response instead of sending my men. I may have put myself in situations that a smart boss would have delegated to others. Why would you do that? Because I needed to feel something other than the emptiness of this house without you in it. The confession came out raw. Because physical pain is easier to manage than emotional pain. Because I'm an idiot who processes grief by picking fights he doesn't need to fight himself. Lena studied him, seeing past the cold exterior to the man beneath. The one who'd learned to channel every emotion into violence because that was safer than vulnerability. You can't keep doing that. You can't risk your life every time we have problems. Then don't leave again. That's not how this works. You don't get to blackmail me with your safety. I'm not... He cut himself off, running a hand through his hair in frustration. You're right. I'm sorry. That was manipulative and unfair. The apology caught her off guard. In 3 years, she'd never heard Damien apologize. Not once. What happens if the Castellanos push harder? She asked. What happens if this escalates into actual war? Then I handle it. The same way my father handled threats, and his father before him. It's what I was raised to do. He paused. But I won't let it touch you. Whatever happens in my world stays separate from you, I promise. Damien, I'm your wife. If we're going to make this work, your world can't be separate from me, not anymore. I need to understand what I'm part of, what I'm choosing. He looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable in his dark eyes. You really want to know? All of it? All of it. For the next hour, Damien laid it out, the structure of his organization, the balance of power between the families, the territories and operations and uncomfortable truths about how his empire actually functioned. He didn't sanitize it or make excuses. He simply told her the truth about the criminal enterprise she'd married into. The legitimate businesses are real, he explained. The real estate development, the construction company, the investment portfolio, all of that is legal and growing. My goal has always been to transition the family completely into legitimate operations within 10 years. But we're not there yet. And until we are, I still control distribution networks, protection rackets, and other operations that exist in legal gray areas, or completely illegal areas. Yes, some of both. He held her gaze steadily. I'm not going to lie to you and pretend I'm just a misunderstood businessman. I've done things that would horrify you. I've made decisions that cost people their freedom and sometimes their lives. I built power on fear and violence. That's who I am, Lena, and if you can't accept that reality, then we should sign those divorce papers right now. Lena absorbed this, turning it over in her mind. She'd known theoretically what Damien was, but hearing him state it so baldly, without justification or romance, was different. Have you ever killed anyone? The question came out quieter than she intended. Damien didn't flinch. Yes. How many? Does the number matter? Maybe. I don't know. I'm trying to understand who I married. He was silent for a long moment. 4 men. All of them were direct threats to my family or organization. All of them were given chances to walk away. None of them took those chances. His voice remained steady, matter of fact. I don't lose sleep over those deaths. They made choices that had consequences. That's how this world works. Lena wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the fire crackling in the hearth. This was the man she loved, a man who could discuss killing people with the same calm he used to discuss business mergers. Are you afraid of me now? Damien asked quietly. She looked at him, really looked at him, at the controlled power in the way he sat, at the darkness that lived in his eyes, at the capacity for violence that hummed beneath his sophisticated exterior. I should be, she admitted. Any rational person would be terrified, but no, I'm not afraid of you. Why not? Because in 3 years, you've never once made me feel physically unsafe. You've ignored me, used me, broken my heart, but you've never threatened me with violence, never made me fear for my safety. She leaned forward. The question isn't whether I'm afraid of you, Damien. It's whether I can build a life with someone who exists in such a dark world. Can you? I don't know yet. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Damien stood and moved to the window, staring out at the snow-covered grounds. When my mother was alive, she used to tell me that everyone has light and darkness inside them. The question is which one you feed. My father fed the darkness. He taught me that power comes from fear, that mercy is weakness, that love makes you vulnerable. He turned back to face her. Then you came into my life and challenged everything he taught me. You made me want to feed the light instead. But I don't know how to do that, Lena. I don't know how to be both the man my empire needs and the man you deserve. Maybe you don't have to be both. Maybe you can choose which man you want to be and build accordingly. And if I choose you, if I choose light, my empire crumbles. People lose their livelihoods. Rival families move in and take everything my family built over 2 generations. Men who depend on me for protection end up dead or in prison. And if you choose the empire, then I lose you, which feels like losing the only thing that actually matters. The confession hung in the air between them. Lena stood and moved to stand beside him at the window. What if there's a third option? What if you don't have to choose between the empire and me? What if you can transition into legitimate business faster than your 10-year plan? What if you can use your power and resources to build something better instead of just maintaining what your father created? Damien looked at her, surprise flickering across his features. You're talking about accelerating the transition. I'm talking about making hard choices. Divesting from the criminal operations even if it costs you power. Investing everything into the legitimate businesses. Using your intelligence and resources to build an empire that doesn't require violence to sustain it. That's incredibly naive, Lena. The criminal world doesn't just let you walk away. Showing weakness invites destruction. Then don't show weakness. Show evolution. Show that you're smart enough to see where the future is heading and adapt accordingly. She turned to face him fully. You said yourself that your goal was complete legitimacy within 10 years. What if you made it 3 years instead? What would that look like? He was quiet, clearly thinking through the implications. It would mean shutting down operations that generate significant revenue. It would mean losing allies who profit from those operations. It would mean exposing ourselves to rivals who would see it as an opportunity to move against us. It would also mean freedom, real freedom. No more looking over your shoulder. No more violence. No more living in a world where people get hurt because you made a business decision. She reached out and took his hand. I'm not asking you to be perfect, Damien. I'm asking you to choose a better path for us, for any future we might build together. His hand tightened around hers. And if I try and fail, if I make the attempt and it destroys everything, then at least you tried. At least you chose love over fear. Damien pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his forehead against hers. You make it sound so simple. It's not simple. It's probably the hardest thing you'll ever do. But I'll be beside you, not as an accessory or a business asset, as your partner, your actual wife, someone who sees all of you, the darkness and the light, and chooses to stay anyway. I don't deserve you. Probably not, but you're stuck with me anyway. He kissed her then, and it was different from the desperate kiss on the terrace. This was softer, more tentative, like he was afraid she might disappear if he held on too tight. When they pulled apart, Lena saw something in his eyes she'd never seen before. Hope. So what happens now? He asked. What does a real marriage between us actually look like? Lena moved back to the couch, pulling him down beside her. We start with honesty, complete transparency. You tell me about your business dealings. You include me in decisions that affect our lives. You stop treating me like I need to be protected from reality. Okay. What else? You move into my bedroom, or I move into yours. Or we pick a new room together, but we stop living in separate wings of this house like polite strangers. A smile tugged at his lips. I can do that. You make time for us, real time, not just public events or business dinners. Actual time together where we learn who each other really are. Done. And you start the transition plan, 3 years to complete legitimacy. We map it out together, figure out what it would take, make a real plan. Damien's expression turned serious. That's going to be complicated, dangerous. There will be pushback from every direction. I know, but if we're building a real future together, we can't build it on blood and violence. We need something clean, something we can be proud of. He studied her face like he was seeing her for the first time. When did you become so fierce? I've always been fierce. You just never bothered to notice. I noticed. I was just too afraid to acknowledge it. He took her hand, threading their fingers together. I have conditions too. If we're doing this, if we're really trying to build something real. Okay, what are they? First, you stay safe. No matter what happens with the business transitions, no matter what kind of blowback we face, you don't put yourself in danger. You let me handle the threats. Damien, I'm serious, Lena. I can survive a lot of things, but I can't survive losing you. So if we're partners in this, you need to trust me to keep you safe. She wanted to argue, but she saw the fear beneath his demand, the genuine terror of something happening to her. Okay, I'll stay safe. What else? Second, you talk to me. If you're angry or hurt or confused, you tell me instead of disappearing for 4 days and making me slowly lose my mind, wondering if you're ever coming back. That goes both ways. You have to talk to me too. Really talk. Not just about business, but about how you're feeling, what you're struggling with, all of it. I'll try. I'm not good at that, but I'll try. Third condition? Damien's expression softened. You give us a real chance, not an obligation because of contracts or family deals. Not a trial period where you're just waiting for me to screw up so you can leave. A real chance to build something that matters. Lena squeezed his hand. I'm here, aren't I? I turned down Victor's job offer. I came back even knowing everything you told me about who you are and what you've done. That's me giving us a real chance. You turned down the job? This morning, before I came back. Something fierce and possessive flashed in his eyes. Why? Because as scary and complicated as this is, walking away felt worse. Because I love you, Damien, even when I don't want to, even when it would be easier not to. I love you. It was the first time she'd said the words out loud. The first time she'd admitted what she'd been fighting against for days. Damien's composure cracked. He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. Say it again. I love you. Again. I love you, you impossible, complicated, frustrating man. He buried his face in her hair, and she felt him trembling. When he finally pulled back, his eyes were suspiciously bright. I thought I'd lost you, he said roughly. When you left, when you were gone for 4 days, I thought that was it. That I'd destroyed the only good thing in my life, and there was no way back. You almost did lose me. If you hadn't told me the truth about the contracts, if you hadn't shut down Harborview, if you hadn't been willing to actually change, I would have taken Victor's offer and never looked back. What changed your mind? Lena touched his face, tracing the hard line of his jaw. You did. The way you were willing to sacrifice everything to prove you loved me. The way you gave me divorce papers and told me I could leave. The way you've been falling apart without me, even though you tried to hide it. She smiled softly. You're not good at hiding, by the way. Vincent saw right through you. I'm going to fire Vincent. No, you're not. You're going to thank him for caring enough about you to reach out to me. He violated about 6 different codes of loyalty. He saved your life. You were spiraling, taking stupid risks, acting like you had nothing to lose. He gave me information I needed to make an informed choice. Damien sighed. Fine. I won't fire him, but I'm definitely demoting him. You're impossible. You love me anyway. Unfortunately, yes. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, just holding each other. Then Lena pulled back slightly. So what happens now, practically speaking? Damien considered. We start the transition plan. I'll call a meeting with my core people, Vincent, Marco, Tony, the others who've been with the family for years. We lay out the vision for going completely legitimate within 3 years, get their input on how to do it without getting everyone killed. Will they support it? Some will, some won't. The ones who can't transition into legal operations will need to be bought out or phased out. It won't be pretty, but it's necessary. He stood and moved to his desk, pulling out a legal pad and pen. We'll need to accelerate the legitimate business growth. Double down on the real estate development, expand the construction company, maybe acquire some existing businesses to create immediate revenue streams that replace the criminal income. Lena watched him shift into planning mode, his sharp mind already working through logistics and strategies. This was the Damien she'd glimpsed in rare moments over the past 3 years. The brilliant businessman who could have built an empire through intelligence alone if he hadn't been born into a criminal legacy. What about the Castellanos, she asked. If you're transitioning out of criminal operations, doesn't that make you vulnerable to their attacks? In the short term, yes. But long term, complete legitimacy makes us untouchable in ways criminal power never could. We'd have legal protections, political connections, law enforcement on our side instead of against us. He wrote something on the pad. The key is managing the transition carefully, showing strength while we divest from criminal operations, making it clear that we're evolving, not retreating. How do you show strength while walking away from violence? Damien's smile was sharp. By being smarter than everyone else. By building legitimate power so quickly and completely that criminal rivals become irrelevant. By making them realize that attacking us costs more than it's worth. He paused. And by making a few strategic examples early on, show that we're transitioning by choice, not because we've gone soft. Lena heard the calculation beneath his words and felt a chill. Even in choosing a better path, Damien couldn't completely abandon the lessons his father had taught him. Violence would still be a tool, just used more selectively. Could she live with that? Could she accept that the man she loved would never be completely clean? She looked at him, really looked at him. At the intelligence in his dark eyes, the controlled power in his movements, the complexity of a man trying to change the trajectory of his entire life because she'd asked him to. Perfect didn't exist, especially not in this world. But growth was possible. Evolution was possible. A man who could acknowledge his darkness and choose to feed the light instead. That was possible. Okay, she said. Let's do it. Let's build something better. Damien set down the pad and pulled her close again. We're really doing this? Building a real marriage? We're really doing this. I'm going to screw up. Probably a lot. I've spent my whole life being one way. Changing isn't going to happen overnight. I know, I'll probably screw up too. I've spent 3 years building walls against you. Learning to tear them down will take time. She looked up at him. But we'll figure it out together. That's what partners do. Partners, he repeated like he was testing the word. I like that. They spent the rest of the afternoon mapping out the beginnings of a plan. Damien made calls, rescheduling meetings, and clearing his calendar. They decided to start small. Dinner together that evening, just the two of them, no business discussions allowed. Tomorrow they'd tackle the bigger issues, but tonight was about reconnection. Maria nearly cried with relief when she saw them together, and the household staff moved through the mansion with renewed energy, as if Lena's presence had breathed life back into the elegant halls. At 8 o'clock, they sat down to dinner in the small dining room instead of the massive formal space Damien usually used for business dinners. Candles flickered between them, and Maria had outdone herself with the meal. "Tell me something I don't know about you," Lena said, cutting into perfectly cooked salmon. Damien raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" "Anything. We've been married 3 years and I barely know you." "What's your favorite food? What do you do when you're not working? What makes you laugh?" He was quiet for a moment, clearly unused to such personal questions. "Italian food, obviously. My mother's recipe for ossobuco specifically, though no one's been able to replicate it since she died. When I'm not working, I read. History mostly, military strategy, sometimes philosophy." He paused. "As for what makes me laugh, I honestly don't remember the last time I laughed. Really laughed." The admission made Lena's heart ache. "That's the saddest thing I've ever heard. My life hasn't had much room for joy, until you. I'm going to change that. I'm going to make you laugh so hard you can't breathe. I look forward to it." His lips quirked in what might have been the beginning of a smile. "Your turn. Tell me something I don't know about you." "I wanted to be a teacher before my father's business collapsed. I was studying education at university, planning to work with underprivileged kids. Then everything fell apart, and I had to drop out to help at the office." She took a sip of wine. "That's why Victor's foundation offer was so tempting. It was a chance to do the kind of work I'd always dreamed about." Damien set down his fork, his expression intent. "Why didn't you ever tell me this?" "You never asked, and I figured it didn't matter anymore. That dream died when I became Mrs. Moretti. It doesn't have to." He leaned forward. "What if we started our own foundation? Something focused on education for at-risk youth. You could run it, make it your own, do the work you've always wanted to do." Lena stared at him. "Are you serious?" "Completely. I have the resources. You have the passion and knowledge. It would be a perfect, legitimate business venture, something that gives back to the community and builds our reputation." His eyes lit up with the idea. "We could tie it to the transition plan. Show that the Moretti family is committed to building instead of destroying." "Damien, that's—" She couldn't finish the sentence. It was too much, too perfect. "Say yes. This isn't just another grand gesture. You're not just trying to make me happy in the moment. I'm trying to make you happy for the rest of your life. There's a difference." He reached across the table and took her hand. "I want to build a future with you, Lena. A real future. That means supporting your dreams, not just expecting you to orbit around mine." Tears pricked at her eyes. Yes, I want to do that." They talked through dinner about possibilities, about the kind of programs they could create, the communities they could serve, the impact they could make. Damien's mind worked through logistics while Lena provided the vision, and somewhere in the conversation, she saw what their partnership could actually be. Not him as the powerful boss and her as the decorative wife, but two people with complementary strengths building something meaningful together. After dinner, they moved to the living room, and Damien built a fire in the fireplace while Lena curled up on the couch with her wine. It felt domestic, normal, like something an actual married couple might do on a Friday evening. "Can I ask you something personal?" Lena said as he sat beside her. "Anything. Why did you really keep your distance for 3 years? The real reason, not the justification about me deserving better." Damien stared into the fire for a long moment. "My father raised me to believe that caring about anything makes you weak. That love is a vulnerability enemies can exploit. When my mother died, he made sure I understood that her death proved his point. That caring about her had made him weak, had given his rivals an opening they used to hurt him." He turned to face her. "I saw what losing her did to him. It broke something inside him that never healed, and I swore I would never let anyone have that kind of power over me. But you married me anyway, Because I thought I could keep it transactional, businesslike. I thought if I never let myself feel anything, you couldn't hurt me. His voice dropped. But from the first moment I saw you at your father's office, discussing the arrangement with such quiet dignity, I felt something, and it terrified me. So I built walls, kept my distance, convinced myself I was protecting both of us. From what? From what we could become. From what I felt growing every time I saw you move through this house, bringing warmth to cold spaces. From the possibility that I could love someone enough to destroy me if I lost them. He touched her face gently. Turns out I was right to be terrified, because I do love you that much. And these past 4 days without you nearly broke me. Lena set down her wine and moved closer, wrapping her arms around him. I'm not going anywhere, not anymore. We're in this together now. They sat like that for a long time, wrapped in each other's arms, watching the fire burn down to embers. And for the first time in 3 years, the mansion felt like a home instead of a prison. Eventually, Damien spoke softly. Come to bed with me tonight. Not separate rooms, not distance. Actually come to bed with me. Lena pulled back to look at him, seeing the vulnerability in his request. This wasn't about sex or possession. It was about intimacy. About choosing to be together in the most literal sense. Okay, she said, but we're choosing our room together. Not yours, not mine. Ours. They walked through the mansion hand in hand, eventually selecting a bedroom in the south wing, one neither of them had used before. It had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the gardens, a fireplace, and enough space to feel both grand and intimate. Maria can have our things moved tomorrow, Damien said, pulling her close. Our things. I like the sound of that. He kissed her slowly, thoroughly, like they had all the time in the world. And maybe they did. Maybe this was just the beginning of the life they could build together. When they finally pulled apart, Lena rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. I'm scared, she admitted quietly. I'm scared this is too good to be true, that I'm going to wake up and find out it was all just another manipulation. I'm scared too, Damien said against her hair. I'm scared I'll screw this up, that I'll fall back into old patterns, that I won't be capable of being the man you need. Then we'll be scared together, and we'll figure it out as we go. They stayed like that, holding each other in the empty room that would become theirs, surrounded by the ghosts of 3 years of mistakes and the fragile promise of something better. Outside, snow began to fall again, blanketing the estate in white. A fresh start. A clean slate. And for the first time since their wedding day, Lena felt like they were actually married, actually partners, actually building something real from the broken pieces of what they'd started with. It wouldn't be easy. The transition plan would be dangerous. The past would haunt them. They'd make mistakes and hurt each other and struggle to break old patterns. But they would do it together, and that made all the difference. The morning light streaming through the south wing windows woke Lena slowly, gently. For a disoriented moment, she didn't recognize where she was. Then she felt the warmth of Damien's body beside her, his arm draped protectively across her waist, and reality settled back into place. Their room, their bed, their new beginning. She turned carefully, not wanting to wake him, and studied his face in the soft morning light. Asleep, Damien looked younger, the hard lines of his face relaxed, the tension that usually lived in his jaw completely absent. His dark hair fell across his forehead, and she resisted the urge to brush it back. This was the man she'd married, not the cold crime boss, not the calculating businessman, just Damien, vulnerable and human in sleep. His eyes opened slowly, and when he saw her watching him, a genuine smile spread across his face. Not the controlled, measured expression he usually wore, but something warm and real. "Good morning," he said, his voice rough with sleep. "Good morning." He pulled her closer, burying his face in her hair. "Tell me this is real. Tell me you're really here and I didn't dream the past 24 hours. It's real, I'm here. We're doing this." They lay like that for a while, just holding each other, before the demands of the day intruded. Damien had scheduled a meeting with his core associates for 10 o'clock to discuss the transition plan. Lena had calls to make about starting the foundation. The real work of rebuilding their lives was about to begin. Over breakfast, Maria couldn't stop smiling as she served them coffee and fresh pastries. "It's good to see you both together," she said, her eyes bright with unshed tears. The house feels alive again. After she left, Damien reached across the table and took Lena's hand. Are you ready for today? Once we announce the transition plan to my people, there's no going back. Everything changes. I'm ready. Are you? Terrified, but ready. He squeezed her hand. Some of them won't take it well. There might be resistance, possibly even betrayal. Then we handle it together. That's what partners do. At exactly 10 o'clock, 8 men filed into Damien's study. Lena recognized Vincent and a few others she'd seen around the estate over the years. They looked surprised to see her sitting beside Damien instead of absent from the meeting. Gentlemen, Damien began without preamble, thank you for coming. What I'm about to propose will seem radical, possibly insane, but I need you to hear me out before you react. He laid out the plan methodically. 3 years to complete legitimacy, phasing out all criminal operations, accelerating legitimate business growth, transforming the Moretti Empire from criminal enterprise to respected business dynasty. The room was silent when he finished. Then chaos erupted. You want to just walk away from operations that generate $40 million a year? Marco, a stocky man with graying hair, demanded. That's suicide. The Castellanos will move on every territory the second we pull back, another man argued. We'll lose everything our family's built. This is because of her, isn't it? A thin man named Tony gestured toward Lena with barely concealed contempt. The wife finally decides she matters and suddenly we're supposed to become choir boys? Damien's expression went ice cold. Watch your tone when you speak about my wife, or you can leave right now. Tony's jaw worked, but he stayed silent. Vincent, who'd been quiet until now, leaned forward. I have a question, not a challenge, a genuine question. How do we transition without getting killed in the process? Because the second we signal weakness, every rival family in the region moves against us. That's not paranoia. That's fact. We don't signal weakness, Damien said. We signal evolution. We make it clear this is a strategic choice, not a retreat. We maintain strength while transitioning operations. He pulled out financial projections Lena had helped him prepare the night before. Look at these numbers. Our legitimate businesses are growing 30% year over year. The real estate development alone will generate more revenue within 2 years than our criminal operations ever have. We're not abandoning power, we're transforming it into something sustainable. And in the meantime, Marco pressed, while we're transitioning, while we're vulnerable, what stops the Castellanos from burning us to the ground? I do. Damien's voice was absolute. I'm not proposing we become soft. I'm proposing we become smart. We phase out operations strategically. We protect our people. And anyone who tests us during the transition learns very quickly that walking away from criminal enterprise doesn't mean we've forgotten how to fight. Lena watched the men process this. She could see the calculation in their eyes, weighing loyalty against self-interest, tradition against opportunity. What about us? One of the younger men asked. Those of us who've only ever known this life. What happens to us in your legitimate empire? You transition with us, Damien said. If you're willing to learn new skills, take on legitimate roles, you'll have positions in the new structure. If you can't or won't transition, you'll be bought out fairly, generously. No one gets left behind unless they choose to leave. Vincent studied Damien for a long moment. You're serious about this? This isn't just talk. Dead serious. I've already started divesting from the most problematic operations. I shut down Harborview, which cost me $500 million in projected revenue. I'm committed to this path. The question is whether you're committed to coming with me. Why? Tony demanded. Why throw away everything for some idealistic fantasy about going legitimate? Damien looked at Lena, and something in his expression softened. Because I found something worth more than power built on fear, and I'm not willing to sacrifice it to maintain an empire my father built. This is about creating a legacy I can actually be proud of. One that doesn't require violence to sustain. The men exchanged glances. Then Vincent stood and extended his hand to Damien. I'm in. If you're really doing this, you'll need someone watching your back. I've been with this family 20 years. I'm not walking away now. One by one, others stood and pledged their support. Not all of them. 2 men left the room with dark expressions, and Damien let them go without comment. But 6 remained. 6 men willing to take the risk. After the meeting ended and the room cleared, Vincent lingered behind. That took guts, boss. More than I thought you had, honestly. I'm full of surprises lately. Vincent's gaze shifted to Lena. Mrs. Moretti, I owe you an apology. I shouldn't have texted you without the boss's permission. Violated about a dozen different protocols. You saved his life, Lena said simply. You saw he was spiraling and you did something about it. I'm grateful. Still, it wasn't my place. Damien clapped him on the shoulder. You're not fired. You're not even demoted. You're exactly where you need to be. Now get out of here before I change my mind. After Vincent left, Damien sank into his chair, exhaustion clear on his face. That went better than expected. Only 2 walked out. 2 men who might become problems? Probably. Tony has connections with the Castellanos. He'll likely take what he knows about our operations straight to them. Lena's stomach tightened. That's dangerous. It's expected. There's always resistance to change. We'll handle it. He pulled her onto his lap, wrapping his arms around her waist. But right now, I want to focus on something positive. Tell me about your vision for the foundation. What would you call it? I haven't thought that far ahead. Think now. This is real, Lena. We're making this happen. She leaned back against his chest, letting herself imagine. The Carter Moretti Education Foundation. Focused on literacy programs, tutoring, college prep for at-risk youth. We could start in the neighborhoods most affected by poverty. Give kids opportunities they wouldn't otherwise have. I love it. We'll set it up next week. Seed it with $10 million to start. $10 million? If we're doing this, we're doing it right. You'll need offices, staff, program directors, real infrastructure. His arms tightened around her. This is your dream, Lena. I'm going to make sure you have everything you need to make it real. Over the next 2 weeks, they fell into a new rhythm. Mornings were spent on legitimate business, Damien managing the transition plan, while Lena worked with lawyers and consultants to establish the foundation. Afternoons were for planning their future. Evenings were theirs alone, learning each other in ways they never had before. Damien taught Lena about his legitimate business operations, bringing her into meetings, asking her opinion on decisions. She taught him how to laugh again, filling their private hours with lightness that had been missing from his life for decades. But the peace couldn't last forever. 3 weeks after their reconciliation, Vincent burst into Damien's study where they were reviewing foundation grant proposals. We have a problem. The Castellanos just hit one of our remaining distribution centers. Big hit. 8 men injured, millions in product destroyed. Damien's expression went cold. How did they know which center to hit? That location was off the books. Tony. Has to be. He had access to that information. Lena watched Damien's jaw tighten, saw the violence that still lived beneath his surface rise up, ready to strike. What are you going to do? What I have to do. Send a message that transitioning to legitimate business doesn't mean we're defenseless. He stood, and she recognized the shift in him, the cold crime boss taking over from the man she'd been getting to know. Damien, wait. This is my world, Lena. This is the part I warned you about. I have to handle it. Then let me come with you. Both men stared at her. Absolutely not, Damien said flatly. You stay here where it's safe. No, if we're really partners, I don't hide from the ugly parts. I face them with you. She stood, meeting his dark eyes steadily. I'm not saying I participate in whatever violence you're planning, but I'm saying I see it. I understand what it costs. I witness the reality of the world we're trying to leave behind. Lena, this isn't a game. People could get hurt. You could get hurt. Then protect me. But don't shut me out. Not anymore. Damien looked at Vincent, who shrugged. She's got a point, boss. Partnership means seeing all of it. Finally, Damien nodded. You stay in the car. You stay with Vincent. And if I tell you to leave, you leave immediately. Understood? Understood. They drove across the city in tense silence. Lena sat in the back of the SUV between Vincent and another guard, while Damien made calls, his voice cold and controlled as he gave orders. They pulled up to a warehouse in the industrial district. Another black SUV was already there, and Lena recognized Tony being held between 2 of Damien's men. Stay here, Damien ordered, then stepped out into the cold night. Through the tinted window, Lena watched as Damien approached Tony. She couldn't hear the words, But she saw Tony's defiant expression crumble into fear, saw Damien's controlled fury, saw the moment when violence became inevitable. "Look away," Vincent said quietly beside her. "You don't need to see this part." But Lena didn't look away. She watched as Damien's fist connected with Tony's jaw, watched the brutal efficiency of violence delivered without rage, just cold calculation. Watched the man she loved become someone she barely recognized. It lasted less than 2 minutes. Then Damien was walking back to the car, blood on his knuckles, his expression carved from ice. He slid into the seat beside her. "Drive, now." As they pulled away, Lena saw Tony collapse to the ground, alive but broken. No one spoke during the drive back to the estate. When they arrived, Damien went straight to his study without a word. Lena followed. She found him at the window, staring out at the dark grounds, his hands clenched at his sides. "Are you afraid of me now?" he asked without turning around. Lena moved to stand beside him. "No, but I'm sad." "Why?" "Because I saw what this life has made you, what you have to become to survive in it." She took his bloodied hand gently. "Come on, let me clean this up." In their bathroom, she carefully washed the blood from his knuckles, applying antiseptic to the split skin. Damien watched her in silence, something complex working in his expression. "I told you who I was," he said quietly. "I told you I've done terrible things. But seeing it is different than knowing it, isn't it?" "Yes, but it doesn't change how I feel about you. It just makes me more determined to help you leave this world behind." She wrapped his hand in clean bandaging. "What happened to Tony?" "He's alive. Broken ribs, shattered jaw, but alive. He'll recover in a hospital, then disappear to whatever hole the Castellanos want to hide him in. But the message is sent. Betraying the Moretti family has consequences." "And the Castellanos, what happens now?" "Now we accelerate the timeline. We pull out of the criminal operations faster than planned, cut our losses, divest completely, give them nothing left to attack." His good hand cupped her face. "I don't want to do this anymore, Lena. I don't want to be this person, but I can't just walk away without protecting the people who depend on me." "I know. So we finish the transition as fast as possible. We build the legitimate empire so strong that criminal rivals become irrelevant." She leaned into his touch. "How long? Realistically?" 6 months if we push hard. 6 months and we're completely out of the criminal business. Clean. Then we do it in 6 months. Over the next half year, they worked together with focused intensity. Damien liquidated criminal operations at breakneck speed, taking financial losses but gaining freedom. The legitimate businesses exploded under the concentrated investment. The real estate company tripled in size. The construction firm won major municipal contracts. New ventures in tech and finance opened up revenue streams that dwarfed what the criminal empire had ever generated. There was resistance. The Castellanos made several more aggressive moves, but each time they found the Moretti organization one step ahead, already out of the operations they tried to attack. Other families watched with calculation, waiting to see if the transition would create opportunities for them. But Damien had been right about one thing. Legitimacy brought its own kind of power. Political connections that had been tenuous when he was a known criminal became solid as he transformed into a respected businessman. Law enforcement that had been investigating him suddenly lost interest as he divested from illegal operations. Media that had portrayed him as a dangerous crime boss started writing stories about the philanthropic foundation bearing his and Lena's names. The Carter Moretti Education Foundation opened its first learning center 4 months into the transition. Lena stood in the bright, newly renovated space filled with books and computers and hope, surrounded by the kids who would be their first students, and cried tears of joy. Damien found her in the empty director's office afterward, staring out at the learning center floor. "This is incredible," she said. "We're actually doing it, actually making a difference. You're making a difference. This is your vision, your passion." He wrapped his arms around her from behind. "I'm just providing the resources. You're providing more than that. You're providing legitimacy, connections. Your name is opening doors that would have stayed closed for someone like me. Then we're a good team." She turned in his arms, studying his face. The past months had changed him. The constant tension that used to live in his shoulders had eased. He smiled more, laughed occasionally, looked younger despite the stress of the transition. "We are a good team," she agreed, "in all things." That night, as they lay in bed in their shared room, Lena felt Damien's hand drift to her stomach. "What would you say if I told you I wanted to have a family?" he asked quietly. "Kids. A real family, not just the two of us." Lena's breath caught. "I'd say I've been thinking the same thing." "Yeah?" "Yeah. I want to build something with you, Damien, not just businesses and foundations. I want to build a life, a family, something real and good and whole." He kissed her softly. "Then let's do it. Let's build everything." 2 months later, Damien stood in a downtown law office signing the final documents that officially severed his connection to the last criminal operation bearing the Moretti name. Vincent stood beside him as a witness, and Lena waited in the lobby, her hand resting unconsciously on her still flat stomach where their child was growing. "That's it," the lawyer said. "You're officially clean. No criminal ties, no pending investigations, no legal liability. Congratulations, Mr. Moretti. You're a legitimate businessman." In the car ride home, Damien was quiet. Lena took his hand. "How does it feel?" she asked. "Strange. Like I've been carrying weight my entire life and suddenly it's gone." He looked at her, and his eyes were bright. "My father built an empire on fear and blood. I've spent 6 months dismantling that empire and building something better, something clean, and it feels like finally stepping out of his shadow. You should be proud. What you've done is extraordinary." "What we've done? I couldn't have done any of this without you." His hand covered hers on her stomach. "And now we're building the most important thing of all." Lena had told him about the pregnancy 2 weeks earlier, and his reaction had been everything she could have hoped for: joy, wonder, fierce protectiveness. The walls that had once surrounded him had crumbled completely, leaving the man he might have been if violence and loss hadn't shaped him. That evening, they hosted a celebration dinner at the estate. Not a business affair this time, a real party with friends and family. Marcus Carter sat at the head of the table beside Maria, who'd become like family to them both. Vincent and the other men who'd supported the transition were there with their wives and children. Even Rachel had driven up from the city. "I want to make a toast," Damien said, standing and raising his glass. "6 months ago, I stood in this house at a crossroads. I could continue down the path my father set for me, building power through fear. Or I could choose something different, something better." His eyes found Lena's. "My wife gave me the courage to choose differently, to believe that redemption was possible, that a man raised in darkness could still choose light." "Here, here," Vincent called out, and others joined in. "Today, I signed the last document officially ending my family's criminal enterprise. The Moretti name is clean for the first time in 3 generations, and I couldn't be prouder of what we've built to replace it." He looked around the table at the people who'd supported them through the transition. "Thank you, all of you, for believing this was possible when I wasn't sure myself." As applause filled the room, Lena stood and raised her own glass. "And I want to make a toast to my husband. 3 years ago, we married for all the wrong reasons. 2 complicated people trapped in an arrangement neither of us chose. But we found our way to something real, something worth fighting for." She felt tears threaten and blinked them back. "Damien, you've shown me what real partnership looks like, what it means to choose love over fear, change over tradition, light over darkness. And I'm so grateful to be building a life with you." More applause, and then Marcus Carter stood. "If I may, I'd like to say something." The room quieted. 3 years ago, I made a deal to save my family. I gave my daughter in marriage to a man I barely knew, trusting he would keep his word about protection. But I never imagined it would become this. Never dreamed that the arrangement would transform into genuine love. His voice cracked. "Lena, sweetheart, watching you and Damien find each other, watching you both become better people through this journey, it's been the greatest gift. I'm proud of you, both of you." Lena crossed the room to hug her father, and Damien joined them, the 3 of them standing together in the warm light of the dining room. Later, after the guests had left and the house had settled into quiet, Lena and Damien walked through the grounds in the cool spring evening. The gardens were coming to life after the long winter, flowers beginning to bloom, trees budding with new growth. I have something for you, Damien said, pulling a small box from his pocket. Lena opened it to find a delicate platinum band set with diamonds. Not an engagement ring. They'd never had a proper one. A renewal ring. 3 years ago, I put a ring on your finger as part of a transaction, Damien said quietly. I want to do it again, but this time as a promise. A real promise. Will you marry me again, Lena? Not for business or protection or family arrangements, just because I love you and want to spend the rest of my life with you? Through tears, Lena nodded. Yes, I'll marry you, again and always. He slipped the ring onto her finger beside her original wedding band, then kissed her softly. I promise to choose you every day, he said against her lips. To be your partner in everything. To build a life filled with light instead of darkness. To be the man you deserve. And I promise to stand beside you. To see all of you, the darkness and the light, and love you anyway. To build something beautiful from the broken pieces we started with. They held each other in the garden as stars appeared overhead. Two people who'd found their way from arrangement to genuine love. From brokenness to wholeness, from isolation to partnership. 6 months later, Lena gave birth to a daughter they named Elena Marie Moretti. Damien held his tiny daughter in his arms with tears streaming down his face, and Lena saw the final piece of his transformation click into place. She's perfect, he whispered. Absolutely perfect. She is, and she's going to grow up in a world so different from the one you knew. No violence, no fear, just love and safety and possibility. I'm going to give her everything good and clean and right. And he did. They both did. The Carter Moretti Education Foundation grew to serve thousands of students across the city. The Moretti business empire expanded into one of the most respected in the region, built on innovation and intelligence instead of fear. Their home filled with laughter and warmth as Elena grew, joined eventually by a son they named Marcus, after Lena's father. On their 5th wedding anniversary, they stood in the garden where Damien had proposed the second time, watching their children play on the lawn. Do you ever miss it? Lena asked. The power, the danger, the life you had before? Damien pulled her close, watching Elena chase butterflies while Marcus toddled after her. Not even for a second. That life was empty, Lena. It was just darkness and violence and fear. This, he gestured to their children, their home, the life they'd built together. This is everything that matters. This is what I was supposed to find all along. No regrets? Only one. I regret wasting 3 years being too afraid to see what was right in front of me, but I don't regret the journey it took to get here, because it made us who we are. It made this real. Lena rested her head on his shoulder, watching their daughter's laughter light up the spring afternoon. We did it. We actually built something beautiful from all that brokenness. We did, and we're going to keep building it every single day. Elena ran toward them, arms outstretched, and Damien swept her up, spinning her around until she shrieked with delight. Marcus toddled over, demanding his turn, and soon they were all laughing together on the garden lawn, a family built not by arrangement or obligation, but by choice and love and the hard work of transformation. The invisible wife had found her voice. The feared crime boss had found his heart, and together they'd built a future neither had dared to imagine. Years later, when people asked Lena what had saved her marriage, she always gave the same answer: truth and choice. The truth about who they really were, stripped of all pretense and performance. And the choice to build something real from that truth, however broken and complicated it was. Damien's answer was simpler. She saved me, from myself, from my father's legacy, from a life that would have destroyed me. She gave me something worth being better for. The mansion that had once felt like a cold prison became a home filled with warmth, laughter, and love. The criminal empire that had defined the Moretti name for generations became a legitimate business dynasty that gave back more than it took. And two people who'd married as strangers became partners who chose each other every single day. In the end, that was what mattered most. Not how they started, but how they chose to continue. Not the arrangement that brought them together, but the love that kept them together. Not the darkness they'd come from, but the light they built together. The invisible wife had become visible. To herself, to her husband, to the world. And the feared Mafia boss had become something better than powerful. He'd become whole. Together, they proved that redemption was possible. That love could transform even the darkest foundations. That broken people could build something beautiful if they were willing to do the hard work of change. Their story wasn't a fairy tale. It was messy and complicated and required daily effort, but it was real. And that made it more valuable than any fantasy. 3 years of silence had become a lifetime of conversation. 3 years of distance had become a lifetime of closeness. 3 years of performance had become a lifetime of authenticity. And from the cold ashes of an arranged marriage rose something neither had expected but both had desperately needed. A love story built on truth, partnership, and the courage to choose light over darkness every single day.